90.5.
And you're live on Power Station Radio Gold 90.5 FM, and it's a sunny morning on here in the capital. I don't know how the weather is where you are, because nowadays it tends to rain when you least expect it to. And we are broadcasting live on our affiliate stations across the country. A big thank you to our partner stations in the various regions that are giving us the kind of reach we get every Saturday morning. We are also live on radiogold905.com on the internet. So wherever you are in the world, you can listen to us. But in addition to that, if you want to view the show, watch what we are doing in the studio, look at our panelists as they make their contributions, you can go to PAP MCGH. So it's PAB-MC-GH on Facebook, and you can get to view or watch the program live. And when you are doing that, you have the opportunity to share your views with us, what you think about the topics we are discussing, and then I'll have the opportunity, the privilege of reading your comments out for everybody to listen to. And also, in addition, if you're unable to do that through Facebook and you use WhatsApp, just you can send your comments through 0233 995905. Now, I've said all that without welcoming you to the program. So welcome to the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, and is the biggest platform on a Saturday morning. Thanks for tuning in and listening to us. It is the biggest platform because you listen to us. So we are very happy that you've chosen this platform amongst the various ones that are available to you on a Saturday morning. And just to acknowledge a couple of the stations that you can get us on, Sekpele 104.3 is in Likpe, Radio Pando 102.5 is in Pando, Lukusi Radio 96.1 is in Virgo Lokwati, Radio Silver is in Sekendi, Shine FM 96.9 is in Akachi, Radio Kitan 95.7 is in Saboba, GFM Radio is in London, and of course on the internet we're on radiogold905.com. A big thank you for choosing Radio Gold. Don't forget the program is proudly sponsored by Franco Trading Enterprise, Kulun Ghana Limited, and TT Brothers. They are the sponsors of the program. Before we go to the discussions for today, let me start by sharing with you what is on the front pages of the various newspapers. The first one I have is the Spectator newspaper, and the banner headline is Breast Cancer Deaths High Among Men. That's the Executive Secretary of CSG. Anita asking among Afrima hosts, be mindful of evidence when exposing crime. Man beaten to death, and check your land registration, land title registration. On the front page of the Ghanaian Times, we have Akwaba, Prince of Wales. Akwaba, Prince of Wales' wife visit Ghana. 2019 budget reflects hopeful future. President Otublohun Manche convicted for contempt. GJ to blacklist institutions that assault journalists, and Kobo Group gives VRA ultimatum. And the next is the Daily Guide. It has on its front page, Ioko Grills failed banks directors. Opuni Litovit pops up in court. Nana charges new ministers, and Prince Charles arrives with wife. Those are on the front pages of the Daily Guide. And finally, the Daily Graphic has less increased trade. President says as he welcomes Prince Charles. Poverty responsible for rise in homosexuality, and don't give bribes in my court. High Court judge warns accused litigants. I've seen that notice that was pasted on the door of the High Court judge is making the rounds on social media, clearly indicating that she's not interested in your bribes. Now, if you just joined us or listening to the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, my name is Senna Nombo, and the show is produced by Patrick Asford Boedu. And if you are on Facebook, you are watching us live on PAB MCGA. Just a big thank you to the folks at Franco Trading Enterprise, and they are telling the management is wishes to inform the general public that the ongoing promotion on some WhatsApp platforms in relation to phone top-up for an iPhone is a scam. If you see any promotion on a WhatsApp platform indicating that Franco Trading Enterprise is giving away an iPhone is a scam. Thus, they advise that the general public should desist from giving monies to any unauthorized persons, either by mobile money or cash, in acts of getting a brand new phone. Now, please report such incidents to the nearest police station or call 0302 225 651, 0302 225 651, or 0246 422 338. And also 0247033429 for further information. That's issued by management of Franco Trading Enterprise. And if you want to get yourself a phone, all you have to do is try the Franco Trading app. Franco Trading app. Go to Play Store, download the Franco Trading app. Now, if you use the Franco Trading app to make a purchase through Franco Trading Enterprise, you get 30% off the 30% discount. So that can work for you. So just download that app and try it out. You can buy anything from them and you get a 30% discount. And my panelists are they're just settling into the studio this morning to discuss the issues that we'll be looking at. I have Comrade Kwesi Prajini, who is managing editor of the Inside newspaper. Comrade Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed, former Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. Alhaji Haruna Rashid Ibrahim, Executive Director, Development Challenge, and of course, Emmanuel Wilson is Director of Communications of the People's National Convention. Now, the first thing we'll be talking about is a voice that was played out before I started introducing that program. That has to do with the comments that were made by ACP Dr. Benjamin Agojo on political vigilantism. So we'll be discussing that issue and the impact of political vigilante on the nation's democracy. We'll talk about that over and over again. His new contribution is that the police are unable to act because the constitutional arrangement we have in place have tied their hands, and so the laws on appointment of the IGP and also the police council need reforms if we really want a professional police force. So that's the first thing we'll be talking about. And then we'll be going back to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Now, they were supposed to have constituted a council yesterday. In fact, every institution that's supposed to have representation on the board is supposed to have submitted their nominee on Wednesday. Now, every one of those institutions have done that, but government has not submitted its 4 nominees. Now, yesterday we were told by the UTAC president that they understand that the reason government is yet to do that is because it's unhappy with the name that has been submitted by the other institution. Government is trying to dictate, that's what they allege, the nominees that the other institutions put on. We are unclear exactly why government is trying to do that. So we may be seeing a strike, UTAC reviving their strike action, and that will make it difficult for the school is open as well. And also that Santini visited the campus, and we understand that the damage that was done will cost 1.6 million cedis to fix. And then if we have time, we'll take optional comments. And then on the same issue of NOST, there's also another development on the university, in the university area, that has to do with the Supreme Court judgment on the University of Education Winneba issue. Now, they have given a judgment that may essentially overturn the removal of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Education Winneba. We still haven't seen that judgment in detail, so right now nobody is able to tell exactly what it means. Once again, welcome to the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji And Alhaji. My name is Sena Nombo, and of course we are live on PAB MC GH. So let's start the discussion with Alhaji Haruna Rashid. Is the Executive Director of Development Challenge, and he will be opening the discussion for us. And we're talking about the fact that the police indicating that they are unable to act on vigilantism because the people who are undertaking the vigilantism are members of the president's party, and the president basically is the piper when it comes to the police. So their hands are tied. Alhaji, good morning.
Good morning, Sana, and good morning to all the panelists. And let me take this opportunity also to say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our viewers and listeners. On this issue, but let me also take opportunity to really send out a shout out, if you will, for a great gathering at Adenta constituency when His Excellency former President John Dramani Mahama came there on Saturday. It was really, really a very good turnout. It was a very massive turnout, and my kudos to the constituency executives and also to the branch executives at St. Francis 1A, 1B, and the EP Church. I think it was very well done, and my congratulations to all. Now, on this issue of political vigilantism, let me also highly commend ACP Dr. Benjamin Agojo for really coming out and telling us, saying it like it is. It takes a man of courage. It takes a man, a professional person who really knows, for him to come out and speak truth to power. Because without the courage and really an in-depth analysis cannot be done, and also not only courage but also really knowing what it is that needs to be done. That is why he is the director of the transformation programs at the office of the Ghana Police Service. I think it's extremely important that people know that. Now, having said that, it is no news if you have the director of the transformation programs coming out to openly and publicly admit that due to the setup, constitutionally and otherwise, how the police service and the police council and their chain of command is set up, their appointment scheme and all of that, they are not able to really perform without interferences. This should not be, any news to anybody if you've lived in Ghana for any period of time. We have reports over and over again, and we've had, really politicians and other leaders come out to say that there is interference in all aspects of the police service. Not only in the police service, but also in other institutions. This should be a concern to you and me and all other, well-meaning Ghanaians. Because without the strong institutions that hires and then looks after people, that puts people in, roles and responsibilities that are supposed to really deliver efficiently and effectively services that are supposed to help us, especially when you talk about the police. Their main job, more than anything else, is to protect and serve. Now, how can you protect and serve impartially, without fear or favor, if the chain of command, the who appoints you or who appoints your bosses, look at things in a certain political prism? That becomes an issue. And I think that is what ACP Agojo was talking about. We've had instances from the very first day that this government took office. I'm sure you've heard about the story of Nanka Bruce. Okay? Nanka Bruce, and you've heard about the security officer, the RegSec, the regional security officer at Kumasi. You've heard about the occurrences at people with some vigilante, whether it's the invisible forces or Delta forces taking over taking over from taking over all kinds of places, whether it's at the hospital or other places, about not letting people, or the people who have been put in that place, to do the work that they're supposed to do, all because the feeling is that they can do whatever they wish, because even when they are apprehended, they have some kind of political cover. So, as far as they're concerned, it doesn't really matter to them that they are caught. And then, in fact, in the case of the Delta forces, after springing people from remand in Kumasi, getting into the court and taking people out, what happens? It was just a slap on the wrist. 1,800 Ghana cedis. So this is what ACP Agojo is talking about. And these are the things that I think that we need to really sit back and look to see how professional can this, Ghana Police Service be. And now not only Ghana Police Service, but really all the other institutions that we depend on for them to provide the kind of services that Ghanaians have come to expect. What is the value system? What is the value system that they adhere to? What are the values? What is it that when you come into the service, what are you trained to do? What are you told that you must do? This is your role and responsibility, and no section of Ghanaians, no segment of Ghanaians are more Ghanaian than others. In other words, your job is to protect and serve, and you provide this service in a very impartial way, in a very professional and impartial way. Can you do this knowing that your promotion to the next level is probably dependent on you making sure that you please the powers that be? Knowing also that even your boss's boss was appointed by someone based on their political affiliation. It is no wonder that, survey after survey shows that the general Ghanaian public do not have the confidence in the Ghana Police Service. And I'll venture to say it's not just the Ghana Police Service, but many of our institutions, Ghanaians do not have confidence. You go to many of the ministries and you'd have to find some kind of way for someone to do you a favor, either based on some referral that someone told you that go see this person or that person. And you are treated in a certain way depending on who you know or the political affiliation that you have. This is something that we as Ghanaians have to question, have to really talk about, to question about the professionalism that we expect from our police officers. What is the value system? What kind of training are they given so that we can depend not just on the person, the uniformed officer, but look at the value system that is inculcated in him, the training that is given to him, for him to be able to really do a professional job and to provide the kind of service that you and I come to expect. We cannot do that. We cannot expect a high level of professionalism if the system is set up the way that it is. When you listen to, and I'm sure a lot of you heard the playback of the talk that ACP Agojo had. He was really very straightforward in talking about the makeup of the police council, and given that kind of setup, how can you expect them to be professional? Isn't that also in a way, empowering the Delta forces, the invisible forces, and all these other, terrorist organizations that we have, that it's empowering them? And if you look again at what has happened, with just a slap on the wrist, is just telling them, now look, you can do whatever you want. And in fact, to even have, as we speak, to have, their operations person, I think his name is Opari or something like that, being selected as a director, being given some position in the youth wing. That is tantamount to an approval of what it is that they're doing, because Kennedy Japan came out and said that without these Delta forces, they would not have been able to come to power. The MPP would not have been able to come to power. So, we have to be really honest and look and, put party issues aside and look straight and ask the tough questions. What do we need to do to really expect and, insist on having the kind of services that would help us as Ghanaians to grow? The way it is set up right now, it is not doing that. And that is what gives, this vigilante, or, I choose to call them terrorists, because really what they do is they terrorize people. They put fear in people. They tell them that if you do not do this, they insist, they threaten, they intimidate. If you do not do this, this is what is going to happen to you. And a lot of times they get away with it. There have been stories of people being beaten up, take over. Even before the officers that they came, they won the MPP won the elections. It's widely reported. Samuel Wuku said, take position. So you have at the very highest levels the MPP encouraging this. But for me, I really think that we need to even go beyond party, whether it's NDC or MPP, and to look at what makes sense. Because at the end of the day, what we need is to strengthen the institutions that we have and make sure that they are able to deliver the services, the professional, impartial services that will protect you and me. As it is right now, that is not happening. That is not happening because of the way the Constitution is set up, the powers that are given to the president, the police council, but I'm sure there are other ways that we can do this, and then that is what we need to first, come to terms with, and then ask the tough questions, the value system, the professionalism. And I think we should really keep our eyes on ACP Agojo to see that something untoward does not happen to him, because he mustered the courage to come out and say all these things and is captured. I'm sure some of his bosses are not going to be happy that he came out to say the things that he said. And therefore, he may need some protection, if you will. Some protection in the sense that he's not sidelined, he's not, marginalized because of the things that he said. But, Senna, again, for me, it is about the professionalism and the value system, the training, okay? And for the vigilantism, it keeps going on over and over and over again. The lawlessness, the insecurity. I have never, ever I mean, under any previous governments where you have, the head of government himself coming out in a way kind of encouraging this, and it's very well reported. All that be done, at why rich or baby kakra, and people have predicted this. They told us, Kumsen, they cannot sleep with their eyes open if you have a certain person in power. Is it any wonder that we are experiencing the things that we're experiencing? But again, I want to caution us so that we don't, politicize this too much, and then really look at it from the standpoint of Ghanaians as a whole. The institutions, what we need to do is to strengthen the institutions and insist on professionalism and insist on the value systems and the training that, the recruits, from the recruits all the way to the top people are given. So that, each and every Ghanaian, regardless of which part of the region that you're from, whether you are from the north, south, east, or west, you can feel protected, you can feel the sense of security, so that, when you go out there, see, this also has not only economic, not only social, but also economic implications. Because without peace and security, you cannot really plan, you cannot do anything. It would have impact on the economy, on other things, and then investors will not be able to come into a country where there's always some kind of restlessness, sense of insecurity. So it's extreme. For our march forward towards the development, the peace that we're looking for, we need to address this issue head on. The issue of, the value systems and the professionalism that we have, not only in the police service, but all the security services. We talk about the Ghana Police Service because they are the ones that we are mostly in contact with. But this happens at the Immigration Service. It happens at many, many other services. Depending on what political colors that you have, you are treated in a different way. We need to grow beyond that. We are Ghanaians. No Ghanaian is more Ghanaian than others. Especially when you have a situation where you have an ambassadorial person, an ambassador, come out and publicly say that, MPP, some MPP Ghanaians are more Ghanaian than others. So this goes through just about all our institutions, and we need to arrest this and deal with it head on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Haruna Rashid, for opening today's conversation. Let's move on to Emmanuel Wilson. Welcome and good morning.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Senna. Good morning to my senior comrades, and to our viewers and our listeners. As I keep saying, Saturday mornings like this, individuals have got so many options. But for us to have wonderful listeners and viewers tuning in to us, we should see it as a privilege. And so we want to appreciate them again. We are in to discuss vigilantism and, all about it. Now, Sana, anytime we are discussing or this issue of vigilantism comes into being for us to discuss, a whole lot of questions come into my mind. And most of the questions I keep asking, and I'm still not getting responses to it. Let me first commend the ACP for the boldness he has exhibited in, telling the whole public the truth, as we all know, And indeed, most of us have said these things over and over and over. But for it to come from someone within, that makes it a bit unique. And so that boldness I commend. He reminds me of 2009. Then I was the youth organizer, and there was this similar fora. And the policeman who came in, I've forgotten his name. He made, his submissions were in line with this. He said almost the same thing. So right from 2009, I have heard police officers making these same pronouncements. The question is if these pronouncements are being made by independent commentators like us and from individuals who are directly within the police force or the police service. Why is it that as a nation we've not been able to do what needs to be done to it? It also reminds me of, and indeed, in 2009, the policeman went ahead to cite an example of, I think it was the Tripoli by-election, where someone was captured on tape giving warning shots. And it happened that he wasn't a policeman. He wasn't in any of the security services. He was actually arrested. Then according to this policeman, when this man was arrested, days after, they received instructions from individuals who are in political office, directing them to discontinue the case. And it went on that way. For me, my happiness is with the portion that was stated by this policeman, where he said that how come if individuals or politicians are in power, they seem to trust the police service, but the very moment they leave office and you ask them whether they trust the police service or not, it becomes difficult for them to say yes or no. And it is simply because in office they know exactly what they do with the police service. And so their fear is that the new government that has come will also be doing same. Then if that is so, I ask myself, what then happens to individuals like us who are not in government? The police service that is supposed to protect every one of us. The police service that is being run by the taxpayers' money. If the police service is being controlled so much by governments of the day, then what is the fate of individuals like us who do not constitute the government? The ordinary person on the streets who doesn't have any link or contact with anyone in the government's machinery. What happens to their rights and what happens to they being protected by the police? The other thing that came out, which I find it difficult to appreciate because I have given warning, I have said it over and over that shouldn't be the way to go. And unfortunately, the policeman himself has fallen to it. Is, as a nation, our quickness to brand crimes as political crime. I am still yet to see in the provisions of any of our criminal codes where a particular crime is supposed to be described as political crime. I see every crime, and every crime is supposed to be seen as crime. If Emmanuel Wilson assaults Alhaji Haruna, it is an assault. It shouldn't be termed as a political crime because Emmanuel Wilson is a politician. It shouldn't be so. Indeed, if we want to colorize crime and we want to go on and put certain type of crime under an envelope by name or in an envelope by name political crime, then I would rather want us to also look at hunger crime because it is not fair. It is not fair for someone to be hungry and go and steal a food worth 1 cedi, 2 cedi, or 5 cedi, and that person will be jailed. And someone who is a politician commits a crime which is worth millions of cedis will be let to go because his crime is defined as a political crime. It doesn't work that way. And so we are not supposed to put crime in categories. And so I am very disappointed the policeman himself mentioned, this, creating that impression. Because, the more we do this, very soon, if an armed robber comes to anybody's house and that armed robber is arrested, the most important thing is for the armed robber to be able to prove that he belongs to political party A or political party B. Particularly if what the party the armed robber is able to associate with is the party of the day, the government of the day. We will forget about the fact that he has committed a crime, which is robbery, and we'll be looking at it politically. And before we realize, he will be let to go. And that, to me, is not the best thing to do. All right. Now, vigilantism, what is it all about? That people keep talking about, and I've heard a lot of people calling for its disbandment and all that. That we should ban it. We should ensure that it doesn't exist. What is it that makes vigilantism illegal? And to date, no one has been able to tell me what exactly makes vigilantism illegal. When a group of people come together to decide that they are protecting or they are going on a particular course, I do not see what is illegal about vigilantism. What we should rather be talking about is the acts of those vigilantism groups. That is what we should be looking at. And so if today, Alhaji Haruna, myself, Uncle Kwesi, you, Mutala, we decide to form a group, it is what we do with the group that should be the question, and that should be the focus. If we end up using the group to engage in illegal acts, then the law is supposed to take its course on us. Because I also know of a lot of groups, some call themselves vigilante groups, and we've not even heard of anything they've done which is illegal. Why then do we call for the banning of vigilante groups? If Group 1, for instance, Delta Force, decide that they are going to a court premise, vandalize the premise, and then free their own, that act is illegal, and that act is what we should be looking at. If Delta Force decides that they are going to attack their member of parliament because the member of parliament has failed to honor his promise, that act is illegal, and that is what we need to look at. If I had gone anywhere to go and attack someone, I am sure the police would have taken me on. And so, if these individuals, whether they are vigilante groups, whether they are a Christian organization, Islamic organization, whatever group they want to call themselves, if they engage in acts that are not right, they are supposed to be taken on by the court. And for me, that is what we should be looking at. I do not have any problem whatsoever if any association decide to create vigilante group or whatever group they want to call themselves. The only problem I will have is when those groupings decide to engage in illegal acts. And for me, any group in this country is not above the law. And so, if you decide that you are forming a group and you are going to engage in illegal acts, why? The law is supposed to take you on. What is happening with this vandalism being recorded by some of these vigilante groups? And I'm using some of these vigilante groups because it is not all vigilante groups that are doing that. What's the difference between them and our colleagues who were in the, how do you call it, tech, when they had that demonstration? They all engage in illegal acts. And so, as I said, for me, it is the illegal acts that we are supposed to concentrate on, and not the groupings, whether you want to call it vigilante, whatever group you want to call it. I am not for it. So if it is the act we are to look at, then we should be asking ourselves, how come as a nation we are unable to ensure that the law takes its course when some groupings engage in illegal acts and illegal activities? And that is where I share so much with the ACP, with some of the things that he raised. For me, our number one problem has to do with our inability to strengthen certain key institutions. And I'm using key because there are some institutions in this country that are of so much essence that weakening it will affect each and every one of us as it is happening. The security services. I have heard a lot of people, and indeed, the president of the day, I've heard him on so many platforms saying that we are supposed to build, ensure that we have strong institutions. You know, I'm tempted to believe that those comments coming from the president and coming from some other individuals I have heard in the past, they are just, you know, they are just choruses. These individuals are saying it without meaning it. If you want to build a strong institution, one of the first things you look out for is the way and manner in which appointments into those institutions are made. The police. What is the constitution of the police? Who heads the police council? It's a politician. He is the chairperson of the police council, the vice president. Who is supposed to ensure the day-to-day running of the police service? It is the IGP. Who appoints the IGP? How is the IGP appointed? It's a politician who does the appointment. The president of the day. Today, any IGP or every IGP knows that when there is a change of government, his office is automatically going to be changed. There's no tenure or security of tenure or in office. And so they know that, look, if me staying in office is dependent on a political party being in office, why? Then I will ensure that I am seen doing the bid of that political party. Which other members constitute the council? The minister in charge of interior is supposed to be part of it. Who appoints the minister in charge of interior? The minister of interior owes allegiance to who? It's the president. And so if you look critically at the constitution of the police council, you realize that majority of the membership, I think so far it is only one that is coming from the Ghana Bar Association, and then one coming from the the Retired Officers Association. All the others are appointed by the president. So if we have a council where about 80% owes allegiance to a politician, how do you expect that organization will be strong? If the president, if leaders are so committed to ensuring that we have strong institutions, then they should be able to take the bold decision of saying that, look, the way in which appointments are made in these institutions, I want to give out those powers so that the appointment will be done in a way that there will be some security in terms of tenure of office by some of these heads in these institutions. Then you'll be telling me and you'll be able to convince me that, yes, we want to build a strong institution. You see, the other thing we must also look at is one thing that keeps going round. And I have heard it, particularly in this government, where some leading members in this government keep telling us, the public, that if we know the role that their vigilante groups, played prior to the 2016 election, we wouldn't be out there condemning them. And some goes to the extent of daring even their own colleagues, telling them that they are not supposed to touch these individuals. The question I'm asking is, what role did this group really play in the 2016 election? And for me, I think that as opposition parties, in taking stock of how we did in 2016, these are some of the areas we should be probing into. If indeed we are committed in ensuring that we win the 2020 election, these are some of the areas we need to probe into, to find out exactly what was done 2016 that we didn't do. So we will be able to review and revise our notes for 2020. But you see, whatever role the vigilante group played, it again raises something that I have always said. This type of politics we are playing in this country, where the winner takes all, it is so much a danger and a threat to the future of this nation. Individuals think that their survival is attached to a political party winning election in this country. For me to get employed, I am made to believe that till my party comes to office, I will not get a job. For me to be able to survive, I am made to believe that till my party comes to office, I will not be able to survive. For me to be able to take care of those depending on me, I am made to believe that till my party comes to office, I will not be able to take care of them. So what do? In an election year, I am going to do everything within my means to ensure that my party wins and my party comes to power. And I'm sure that is exactly what particularly the MPP vigilante groups, because for me, in recent time, it is those groupings that have gone into illegal acts. You understand? So the Delta Forces, and the names are so many, I can't even put all in my mind, but I know of the Delta Force. I am convinced that this group, Delta Force, they were made to believe, and of course that is so, that their survival depends on their party coming to office. And I'm sure they did everything within their means. And that is why individuals in this government can come out boldly to tease us. So we will be imagining exactly some of the things that these people did prior to the 2016 election. The winner-take-all syndrome needs to be looked at. I must be able to survive not because my party is in office. I should be able to survive because I am a Ghanaian and it is my right, and I pay dues and I pay taxes, and as a result of that, it is my right to assess that which I need to assess. If I need to be secured on the streets, I should be, because the police are being paid with my tax. I shouldn't feel secured because my party is in office. I should feel secured because I am a Ghanaian. And that is what we should be looking at. The other thing we should also be looking at, so to ensure that we will eliminate these violent acts that most often these groupings engage themselves in, is to have a strong look at the rate of unemployment in this country. Day in, day out, the rate, it is escalating. People are losing their jobs. Those who are not even having jobs are still not getting jobs. And people are becoming so frustrated. So at the end of the day, they will engage in anything just to survive. And I share very well with the ACP when he said that these individuals, they can easily be lured into terrorist groups. And I agree. I agree perfectly. Because see, how do I put it? Anyone who is really tasting hunger is indeed an angry person. And that person will do anything to satisfy his or her hunger. Anyone who is in the position of being so frustrated because he's not able to survive, he's not able to get a job, he's not able to meet his basic and daily needs, that person is a dangerous person. And that person will be lured and can be lured into anything. And so if we want to reduce and we want to ensure that these groupings do not engage themselves in this act. Why? Those Delta Force members that went to attack the MP in Kumasi, what was their reason? They needed jobs. If these individuals were given jobs, I don't think they would have gone into that act. And so as a nation, we should be looking at the things that triggers this anger. We should be looking at the things that triggers this violent act. We should be looking at the things that triggers individuals into going into illegal acts. And that is where, for me, the focus should be. And not whether we should ban, dissolve groupings, vigilante groupings. Look, if you are a political party and you want to have thousands of groupings, I don't have any problem with that. I will only have a problem with it when that grouping is engaging in acts that amounts to disturbing of the public peace. Just like the way the MPP groupings are engaging themselves in. We should be able as a nation to put structures down, structures that will help us, reduce poverty. But you see, why have we asked ourselves why it seems that these Delta forces, and I'm using them as I said because they are in recent and they are the ones groupings I have seen and we've all seen, they engaging in illegal acts. Why is it that their anger seems to be moving up every now and then? And the answer is very simple. It is because prior to the 2016, they associated and worked with some individuals, and they knew the state of those individuals prior to the 2016 elections. Now, we all did the work, and indeed, the Delta Force members did most of the dirty works. After doing the work, we have come into office, and then all of a sudden, the person who was buying roasted plantain with me, today I see him, and if you complain that, look, I am not getting a job, the only thing he does is to put his hand in his pocket, and he's no more removing one CD that he was giving me the other day, but he's now removing dollars, and he will give me $100. He will give me $50. The next day, I will see this same person who was taking trotro with me and we were doing, and he was urging me on to do all the dirty works. Today, we are in office, and I'm seeing this person using a car, a vehicle that the petrol for a week is more than the cost of the petrol that is used in that vehicle for a week is more than the amount of money I am able to have in the next 5 or 6 months. And yet this person is still telling me that take time, just relax, we will ensure that you get a job. It doesn't make sense in the minds of these persons. And that is why they will end up taking the law into their own hands. That is why they will go and then attack their member of parliament. That is why they, based on the promises that they were given prior to the 2016 election, they will have that boldness to go to a courtroom. It doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense to me. You know, we should, if all of us want to talk about vigilante groups and whether or not we should ban it and all that, banning vigilante group will not solve any problem. It won't. Why? If I want to engage in an act which is illegal against you, because you promised me that if I do A, B, C, D, you will reward me with X, Y, Z, and I've done the A, B, C, D. It is working for you, and you fail to reward me. I may decide not to be in any group. If I want to attack you, I will attack you. If I am looking for a job and I'm not getting it, I may decide not to be in any group. If I want to take the law into my own hands, I will do that. Let us as a nation start discussing, for me, let's start discussing how indeed we can make certain institutions truly independent. And number one of that institution is the police service. Let us start discussing as a nation, how can we diminish the so many powers given to the office of the president, where the president appoints and disappoints almost everything and everyone in this country, where the president seems to be so much untouchable and he's in charge of virtually everything. Even DCs, the president is in charge of it. And the reason why some presidents will say when they were candidates, they will say that, oh, when we come to office, we will ensure that we elect DCs. They come to office and they are finding it difficult to do that. It's because coming to office, they've realized how sweet it is to have those powers. So they are like, hey, do I really want to let go of these powers? If I do, how will it affect me come the next election? And those are the things these leaders are looking out for. And so as a nation, if we really, really want to take care and discuss this vigilante illegal acts, let us rather tackle it from the roots.
Okay.
The root is if we have independent, strong police institution, I don't think any of us will be bothered by vigilante groups or not. Because we know very well that since crime has no colorization, if you engage in a crime, whether you are a minister, you are an appointee, or whoever you find yourself to be, if you engage in illegal acts, we are assured that because we have independent institution, the law will take its course.
Okay.
But our fear is that because those institutions are not so independent as we are supposed to have it, they are not independent, it then becomes very difficult. And that's why, as I said earlier on, when government leaves office and you ask them whether they trust the police service, they find it difficult to tell you yes or no. It is just because they know the loophole when they were in office, and they know how they capitalize on those loopholes. And so, as a result of that, their fear is that now that they are off power, the new government comes, and the new government will also capitalize on those loopholes. And then, as a result, we will not be able to have the professionalism that we are expecting from these institutions. So now, I will conclude by saying that yes, the police service is not as independent as we expect them to be, but we still want to encourage them that majority are those who are outside and support and are yearning to see them act in a professional way. And so sometimes they should be extra bold. They should damn the consequence. Just like the way the ACP was bold and has been bold. Alhaji Haruna was saying rightly that his fear is that this man may even be victimized because of his boldness. But for the sake of the nation, I am sure if every security officer decides to act boldly, a time will come when the politicians will realize that, look, we cannot and will not be able to control the security service as we've always been doing. And that will be the beginning of we having a strong institution.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. And if you just join us, you're listening to the Mother of All Talk shows. Let me share with you a couple of the messages you are sending us through Facebook. William Agbenyegan says, the police can't hide behind so-called political interference to fail to deal with the menace of political vigilante breaches of the law. After all, every organization has challenges and interferences, but they rise above that and display professionalism. Doctor shouts for, no, the doctor is just playing smart, but not being clever. Well, Martin Mensan says that from Asylum Dawn says political vigilante groups play a key role in securing electoral victory for their parties, but they are also key agents in pushing their parties to opposition. Vigilante groups, particularly those belonging to the party that won elections, have over the years taken the laws of a country into their own hands, forcibly ejected officials from their officials of previous administration from their apartments and physically assaulted them. Samuel Nyamishe says that I suggest there should be a constitutional review on some of these institutions to make them independent bodies to carry out their duties. It will be therefore proper if the constitution does not give power to the government to control some of these institutions like the security. And Rabna Ade Blankson only says that she agrees with Emmanuel Wilson. And Ola Speed says, if our security services are to be depoliticized, we do not need political terrorism or vigilantism because they will be professional in their dealings. And, a couple more of the messages on Facebook. I'm just trying to retrieve them. And finally, Musa Abatwa in Kumasi says, Sena, whether we like or not, the vigilantism in our political space has come to stay because the NPP is condoning the activities. Hence, every political party must form vigilante groups in order to protect his or her political interests. However, as far as I'm concerned, President Akufo-Addo is not committed in the fight against corruption, hence not interested in dealing with his corrupt officials. Hence, corruption has been institutional. That's why they are afraid to pass the ITI bill. The unprecedented level is currently happening at the Maritime Authority boss. The Maritime Authority bosses one is just a tip of the iceberg. When your president, who virtually appointed every member of his family into government, what do you expect to happen? Ghana deserves better. And with that, I come to Comrade Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed. But before you come in, you can also share your views to 0233-995905, 0233-995905 on WhatsApp. Comrade.
Well, thanks. And let me say good morning to your cherished viewers and, of course, those who follow us on PAB MC on Facebook, and, of course, to my senior colleagues here and my brother Wilson. I think that the two previous speakers have extensively dealt with the issue, but I would also have something to say on it, since it is a very important issue that borders not only Ghanaians but lovers of democracy. I listened to the audio you played. Is Dr.
Agojo.
Agbojo.
ACP.
ACP Agojo. And frankly, I must admit that I really admired his courage, the profundity of his thoughts and delivery. I think it was extremely admirable. I think that he demonstrated, or he came across as someone who is an intellectual. Of course, I believe he's a PhD holder. But he fell short of demonstrating the intellectualism in his delivery and presentation to absolucy. And I say this because, without wanting to take the shine from his excellent delivery, which I have already indicated, my understanding of intellectual presentation is that you try to be all-encompassing. It seems to me that the agenda was to defend and protect the integrity of the police service, without admitting even once that part of the problems we have and the inability of the police to deal with such terror groups, the police themselves can take the blame. Or if you listen to him repeatedly, he says that when all these things are not done, how do you expect the police to be professional? I thought he was dwelling so much on the ontological aspects of the discourse without looking at the epistemological part of it. The extent to which he was not admitting that the issue of being principled, the issue of being fair, is not an objective one, it's a subjective one. Sure. The principle of being fair as a person who is working with a state institution, more so the police service, regardless how you are appointed, regardless who appointed you, there are some who can be fair. He demonstrated that he can be fair-minded. What prevents the other police officers from demonstrating same? Now, if you want to link it with only the laws, which I admit that the laws themselves and the examples he gave serves as Inselberg on the police demonstrating their independence and discharging their responsibilities and duties as required by law and expected by Ghanaians. So I would admit that yes, the laws themselves are also a hindrance. But to the extent that beyond the laws hindering upon your fairness and your firm and principled position, you also have a responsibility. So what I expected him, as intellectual presentation as it is, which I admired, I thought that he could have also at least found some space within his heart to admit that, yes, regardless of all these challenges, the police could have done better. The police isn't doing that. So if you do an intellectual presentation and then you try to shield an aspect of it, and then you try to put all the blame on politicians, I think that is where I have a problem. But again, he also attempted to equalize. I mean, the level at which we have this abuse of political power and how the state security agencies under the Fourth Republican Constitution or democracy that we practice we have never seen such. So if you want to demonstrate to come across as somebody who is courageous and fair and honest, you don't hasten to talk about the fact that, oh, they did this. I'm not referring to only this government, even the NDC. The NDC, as a matter of fact, is not ruling this country. The NDC was voted out by the people of this country because the MPP promised them that they were going to do things differently, and for which reason Ghanaians voted. Now, even if under this government, we have, in fact, the most unacceptable level of abuse of political power, the disrespect to the independence of state institutions, such as the police, you need to put it squarely. Now, if you are doing a presentation and you want to appear as an intellectual presentation, fair-minded one, talk about the government that is in power. Now, this attempt, because you see, the reason why I am making these references is that the kinds of things we are all concerned ourselves with has never happened under any political party, at least in this Fourth Republican Constitution. The NDC has never had a vigilante group. And in fact, even if the NDC had a vigilante group, they have never been engaged in the kinds of things that are engaged by these terror groups that we have. But let me also quickly point out, Emmanuel Wilson, vigilante groups as we have them in this country, by their nature, the formation, the purpose, and the agenda behind their formation, they are illegal. There is nothing wrong with you having a private security agency or group as long as they act within the ambit of law. The vigilante groups that we have, by the nature of their formation and the purpose for which they are formed, if you look at it, put aside forming a legally accepted vigilante group, but we are the ones we are discussing, by the nature of their formation, the pronouncement, the toxic pronouncement that comes from leadership of this government and MPP party members, they are illegal. In fact, I would want us to look at the AU Convention on the Prevention and Combating Terrorism. If you permit me, I'll just read it. If you look at Article 3, Terrorist Act, what they define to be a terrorist act. And remember that once we are a signatory to that convention and ratified it by Parliament, it becomes part of our law. That's one thing people must understand. Now, they say that any act which is a violation of the criminal laws of a state, note this, any act which is a violation of the criminal law of a state, party, and which may endanger the life, physical integrity, or freedom of, or cause serious injury or death to any person, any number or group of persons, or causes or may cause damage to public or private property, natural resources, environmental or cultural heritage, and is calculated or intended to, subsection 1, intimidate, put in fear, force, coerce, or induce any government, body, institution, the general public, or any segment thereof to do or abstain from doing any act, or to adopt or abandon a particular standpoint, or to act according to certain principles. I think I won't go further. Okay. Any action that is taken by any group, either to force, to induce, to force you to abandon a standpoint or a position, whether private or public, to instill fear, intimidate, they are all terrorist groups. So the Delta Force, the Invisible Force, the Bulgar Bulldogs, the Kandahar Boys, by definition of law, they are all terrorist groups. That is a fact. Don't tell me this is just AU Convention on the Prevention of Terrorism, Combating and Prevention of Terrorism. As long as we are signatory to it, as long as we have indeed ratified it by our Parliament, it becomes part of our law. So a judge in this country can prosecute someone on the basis of terrorism using this. Now, how were they all formed? President Nanado, then candidate Nanado, was the brain, and he's still the brain behind the activities of these groups. He financed them. They are being financed from the Flagstaff House. Not a single day has the president ever condemned any action taken by these terrorist groups. Not a single day did he condemn them. Now, you observe one thing. Any time at all there is anything, any act that these terrorist groups are engaged in, and the president is being forced to condemn, he makes a blanket condemnation of such acts, but not specific condemnation of an act that was engaged in by these groups. He doesn't have the courage to do that. And I think that we need to get it. So what I was expecting the doctor to do, the ACP,
Dr. Agojo.
Dr. Agojo to do, was to single them out and condemn, because you cannot have you can't relate. If there is any palpable evidence that the NDC has ever formed such groups and they engage in such acts in this country, the acts of these people have been emboldened by the absolute silence or refusal of condemnation and taking action by this president. They have been emboldened by that. Now, let's find out how they were formed in opposition. They never denied that. They admitted that they formed them. Perhaps the NDC should have acted swiftly. Perhaps the government at that time should have dealt with them, regardless the consequences and regardless the hypocritical comments coming from so-called independent media and so-called civil society groups and think tanks. But the NDC was cowed to submission into taking decisions that could inure to the benefit of this country and preventing the formation of such terror acts. We refused to do so because we were so afraid that when you do that, people will single it out and say the NDC is being abusive. Today, we have an albatross on our neck. The democracy of this country is in danger. The democracy of this country is in danger. You see, vigilantism, like I said, is alien as far as the Fourth Republican Constitution is concerned. Perhaps their activities, profound causing of danger, disruption of our electoral processes is alien. And for me, we all have a duty and a responsibility. Look, Senna, we are no longer confronted with the elephant in the room. No, we are no longer confronted with the elephant in the room. Rather, a monstrous group of people who got the rulership of this country through deceit, through lies, vile propaganda, malignment, and sometimes coerce Ghanaians into believing that they had what it takes to govern this country. Ghanaians were hoodwinked into believing that President Nana Addo, then candidate Nana Addo, had the magic wand to solve the phantom problems they created, and making Ghanaians believe that those problems they created were going to persist as long as the NDC remained in power. They created their own problem because it wasn't real. What they did was that to say that the NDC was so corrupt, President Mahama was so corrupt, without a baptism of evidence. And all these things were supported by the most discredited person in this country, who is Martin Amidu. He doesn't have an iota of credibility in him. If he has, and if we were a serious country, Mr. Martin Amidu should not be where he is. On the very day he appeared before the appointment committee, where he admitted that all the allegations he leveled against President Mahama and the President NDC appointees, he didn't have evidence. They were all based on perception. That was the very day Ghanaians should have known that he's a walking, discredited individual. Yet we still hold him in high esteem. Let no one tell me that, oh, he didn't say he didn't have evidence, but he said it was perception. You know why? He knew that he was under oath. And he knew he could not lie under oath. So why? They asked you to do it. He said, I don't have it. But you remember, when he was holding those press conferences and issuing those needless statements he was issuing, he made conclusive statements, maligned people. He concluded that NDC appointees were corrupt. He concluded that President Mahama was corrupt. He knew deep down him he was lying. Yet, we still hail him. And all of those people and his actions, you can call them epistles of his needless writings, all added gave the NPP the knack, the impetus to prosecute the agenda of creating their own world and lying to Ghanaians that the NDC was so corrupt, the NDC was so insensitive, and Ghanaians believed that and voted them out. That is why I say that we are no longer confronted with the elephant in the room, rather the monster of state capture. Because we are confronted by a monster of state capture. And the monstrous activities is not only limited to political persuasions. It goes beyond that. It has something to do with some of you, the media. I mean, interestingly, Senna, the current Minister for Information, when myself and Felix were appointed as two deputy ministers at the Ministry of Information, they sat at joy and said the Ministry of Information didn't need more than one deputy. Interestingly, he was one of 3 deputies. He was one of 3 deputies. Yet they sat and said that the Ministry of Information didn't need 2 deputies. Do these people have principles? If Mr. Martin Amidu, if this government and the president was sincere in fighting corruption, the very day Mr. Martin Amidu admitted that he didn't have any evidence and everything he said was based on perception, they would have revoked that appointment. But you know why? It's a grand scheme. The agenda is that having lied our way into power, we must find ways to restore the deceit and the lies. And that there are a majority of Ghanaians who are so gullible who would still believe in those lies. But you know, times have come that people no longer hate those lies. People ask themselves, what has been my economic position ever since these people were given the mandate to rule? Senna, let me say that we live under a government that is not of rule of law, but under the whims and caprices of the king. President Nana Addo is behaving like a king, that even dissenting views and positions in his government, either they get you out or they frustrate you. So there are people within the NPP, in private they will tell you that the way things are going is very bad. The security of this country is in danger because of the actions, tacit, approval, and sometimes direct approval of the president and other hawkish, if you like, appointees of this government. Yet they can't vent out their frustration. They can't point out because they are being ruled not just by a president who believes in rule of law. They are being ruled by a king whose whims and caprices you must not question. You need to follow without any argument. And for me, that I think that is extremely worrying. But one thing I know is that before President Nana Addo, then candidate Nana Addo, was given the mandate, we were warned. Look, Senna, I never said President Nana Addo could not become president. There were people within NDC, I never said that. What I said repeatedly, and I believe which I have been vindicated, is that in the event of Ghanaians giving him the mandate to rule, he was going to be a terrible president. And terrible president he has become. Ghanaians will one day remember the monstrous cruelty with which they were ruled by Nana Addo. This is a person whom were told by his closest friend that he could not sleep to see Nana Addo being president of the Republic of Ghana. He is yet to tell us why. But I really don't think that statement was made out of nothing. That's one. You have the then President Kufuor, who everybody knew was supporting Mr. Honorable Alan Chirmantin in their bid to lead the NPP in 2008. When he had a meeting with NPP party chairman and leadership in Kumasi, and he said that vote for someone who can maintain the peace of this country. Don't vote for someone who, when you get to the crowd, you have to climb a tree to be able to see him. And so that person wouldn't ensure the peace and unity of this country. Between Mr. Alan Chirmantin and then Nana Addo, who was taller, who did you need to climb a tree? So you don't need anybody to tell you that President Kufuor was referring to Nana Addo. But I'm not looking at his height. My interest of that statement was not about the height. My interest of the statement has to do with the fear of the unknown to many Ghanaians, which probably they knew that the man is given the mandate and this country will be torn apart. And torn apart we are engaged in today. Now you have one of the founding fathers of the NPP in the person of Dr. Nyaho Tamakulu, who made it bluntly that he could not ensure, Nado could not ensure the unity and peace of this country. And therefore we should not give him the mandate to rule this country. All these people and their statement could not be a mere coincidence. And every single statement and fear expressed by anybody about the possibility of Mr. Nana Addo becoming the president of the Republic of Ghana have all been vindicated. We are more divided as a country than we were. You sit down and you look at each other with scorn. That is what happens. They venture, when Gabi and Co were caught making those statements about the Asante Hene, the Asante Hene could not make such public pronouncement if he didn't have that evidence. It wasn't only they. So you realize that they spread their tentacles of division and destroying this country the more, not within the realms of politics, even with ethnicity, with chiefdoms and kingdoms, because what is the agenda? So if today, all these groupings that are formed by the president, then candidate, and continue being financed by this president, all these actions they are taking, that nobody sees the need to condemn them, and any attempt or any time anybody gathers the courage to condemn these unacceptable acts, in order for them not to be lynched verbally, they would have to bring the NDC in to justify their seemingly neutral position. That is what they do. If an MPP engages in an act, and you find even those few hypocrites who want to put a charade of being independent and fair-minded, even if they desperately attempt to protect the already ramshackled and destroyed integrity by their so-called civil society groups or independents, they try to bring the NDC in to say that all political parties The NDC is not ruling this country. The people of this country are not paying their taxes to the NDC. What the person and the government that we are paying our taxes to the party is the government that is an MPP government. And therefore, when you are seeking state responsibility and civil conduct of those responsibilities, you don't bring in other political parties and then you tell us that, oh, but the NDC was also engaged in this. The NDC is not ruling this country. If they assume without admitting that the NDC was engaged in such acts, that was the reason why Ghanaians voted the NDC out of power. That was the reason. So why would you desperately try to equalize? So you see, some of those people, and I have listened to a lot of them, they share some of these hypocritical comments that are made. I have seen NDC communicators on social media sharing those hypocritical comments. Look, it is nothing but a Trojan horse. So that once they make those desperate statements, as if they are neutral, then they will come hard on you. Today, you have a journalist, unfortunately and sadly, who was manhandled or beaten by a security attaché of allegedly. I'm just assuming allegedly by a security man following the former president in his campaign. If it is true, it is unacceptable. Not only a journalist, every Ghanaian. Now you have these hypocrites who are now coming and even demanding that, oh, the journalists in this country should boycott political parties. Why? In as much as I condemn that alleged act by the security man, and in which even President Mahama himself personally apologized to the journalists. And they said, we are commencing investigating into the matter. Because the security attaché who were brought, that the journalists could not identify the one who did it. Yet still, we would commence investigation into the matter. You see these hypocrites everywhere as if that such a thing has never happened, condemnable as it is. When your journalist is struggling for his life by the conduct of police officers unleashed on them by this government. What is good for the goose should be good for the gander. So I condemn any attack on journalists. And if there is any security attaché who did that, actions ought to be taken swiftly to deal with the person. But listen to those toxic comments that are coming up. Let's boycott. I'm told Ashibe, or what's the name? If he said that, I would be very shocked. That Joy FM should even boycott. I stand to be corrected. Boycott anything that has to do with the NDC. The question then is that when we had more serious incidences that happened, did you even have the courage to condemn it?
Fatih slapped the onion seller.
Absolutely. You didn't do that. And like I said, let it not be misconstrued into thinking that we are saying that this one is justified. All are not justified. It's wrong to do that. It's unacceptable. Not just journalists, anybody. Journalists have a moral duty and a responsibility. And I've always said that the sword of the journalist must be seen cutting at both sides. Yeah. Look, there are a lot of things that happen in this country the citizen wouldn't know. They can only know if journalists are supposed to be independent and proactive. So me, I respect and value the work of journalists. But journalists also must be fair. That when such an incident happens, you condemn it. When it happens with another political party, condemn it with that same vigor. Unfortunately and sadly, when it comes to the MPP, that is not there. So this desperate attempt of trying to equalize, to be able to justify some of the condemnations of this government. Once you do that, you whittle down even the sincerity of your condemnation of such act. So it seems to me that the doctor, with that excellent presentation, one, didn't admit one single admission, except that I didn't listen to the entire presentation. That yes, regardless all these legal, instruments that hinder our work, we also have a responsibility. And that's why I said that being principled, being independent is not only an objective matter, it's a subjective matter. He also made a reference to what happens in Kenya on the issue of Raila Odinga declaring himself. I thought that he put out a statement that is also factually inaccurate. He said that because of the laws governing the conduct of police in Kenya, when he declared himself as the people's president, they didn't intervene. It was not about the law. It's illegal, even in Kenya, to have engaged in that. But the reason why perhaps the police didn't intervene was because of the history they have. that such has ever happened. The police intervened and it led to several thousands of people losing their lives. That could have been the prevention. That could have been the reason, and not about the laws. I haven't seen any law anywhere in the world. If I can borrow senior comrade statement, even in Kusumukaya, that Uncle Kusiprat, even in Kusumukaya, where they will say that you can declare yourself as people's president, it's illegal. But they couldn't do that. So to try to say that because of the police, because of the conduct of the police, they could. And you see, we should also be mindful of the kind of democratic principles that happen in those countries and what happens here. Now, let's look at the positive of the examples of those countries and see if we can. And I agree with him on that score, that it is possible for us to take a second look at our laws and see how is the IGP appointed, how are the CID's boss appointed. As we see today, you have a CID boss who has a clock of allegation of wrongdoing on her neck. The CID boss, the woman, Echua. This is a woman who was caught on tape. The woman, the tape was played. The woman and the entire police service said that it was doctored by A+. A+ dared the entire police service and dared the woman that if you think it is doctored, arrest me. The police themselves said that they had commenced investigation into the matter to establish what? To establish that the tape was doctored. Now that investigation had only two outcomes. One, the one outcome is that the tape was indeed doctored, and for which reason A+ should not be a free man, because it is illegal, it is criminal to doct anybody's voice, let alone a CID boss. That's one. The other outcome was going to be that it was not doctored, it was the true statement and voice of the woman, for which reason the woman should not even be an investigative officer. Now, as if the president didn't care, we still do not know the outcome of that so-called investigation. The president came out of nowhere and promoted the woman in this country. You have my good friend, the Deputy Minister for Youth and Sports, who was accused of engaged in visa racketeering. The same government set up an investigation into the matter. Long before even the outcome of that investigation, the president declared him free. Yet such people have the knack, the audacity to question NDC's act on corruption. I think that the strategy in going forward as a political party, our communication, and I'm just praying that at the end of the day, when we have all these national officers elected, they need to understand that it can be business as usual. And that is why Albert Einstein said that the significant problems that confront us can never be solved with the thinking we had when we created them. We need to implement that fully in our communication strategy, that this cowardice attitude towards dealing with the ills in society that are perpetrated by this government deliberately must stop. And the only way we can stop them is to engage them intellectually. And I am very convinced that the people of this country can no longer wait. And so my last statement to the NDC is that let's put the bravest of face. We have an elections to win. And that elections can be won out of hard work, sincerity, forgiveness, and fortitude. I believe once we do that, we can win this election, because we are in a mess that I don't think that this country has ever experienced, not even under military dictatorship.
Thank you very much, Comrade Murtala Mohammed. Before I go to Uncle Kwesi Pratt, let's share with you some of the messages we are getting through our WhatsApp platform, 0233995905. But before I start, Lucky Joe, I'll be very glad if you can look at your test again and resend it. Just reconstruct it and resend it. And I start with Sir Prince Amanansi. He's in Amanansi, Ayen Swano. He says, I'm surprised this so-called talkative government is still going round with their propaganda and deceptive analysis. This government is only tickling themselves and laughing. Tell Ghanaians we have learned their lessons now. Say no to 419 government in 2020. Tafa Enamra here says, I was shocked to hear the man's voice this morning on radio, trying to justify the reason why he has 11 air conditions in his house. Well, that is the Ghana Maritime Authority. Political vigilantism has become a critical juncture in our history. This bunch of indisciplined militia groups distort sensitive government machinery and personalities. Yet, day in, day out, we see them walking free and covertly planning more attacks. If the government does not, didn't tell, if the government is not told to account those who carry out this horrible atrocity, it leaves the door open for them to do more. Felix Ayele, Ghana Technology University College, Tessano, he says, greetings to Honorable Mutala, and hi, Mr. Host and your panelists. I'm highly enthused by that powerful speech and suggestions of the speaker on the police professionalism in Ghana. I'm very sure as many people, including me, have the same thoughts, except that we don't have the platform to express ourselves as he does. So therefore, let's pay serious attention to issues of such nature, if really we want to build a serious nation. Those days that Ghana was without vigilante groups, there were progress. And what calls for the formation of this group, that is bringing negativity to our nation building. Well, that's from Philip Adika, a.k.a. Odasani in Italy. Fellow Ghanaians, don't blame anybody for insecurity in this country. Blame the Nanado they brought Captain Koda to. Captain Koda brought. Okay, your message is unclear, Alhaji Ali. And this one, it is the type and character of government in office that is the problem. Today, headmasters in senior high school cannot voice out problems in their schools, else they'll be victimized. So how can the police be independent and deal with vigilantism? He will lose his job. Police chiefs elsewhere will resign in order to strengthen democracy, but not in Ghana. And that's from Senior Asowutum. And this one, Hamza in Nima says, Comrade Senna, good morning to you and your distinguished comrades, especially my brother, Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jr. The problem we have in this country is Nanado and the bootlickers, fake men of God. At the time Nanado made the famous All Die Be Die, Sami Oku take position, Kennedy Japan saying they should kill guns and others. Abai Fakabo's Afghanistan talk and more from their party men. These purported men of God saw nothing wrong. Imagine if we, JDM, Rawlings, or anyone in the NDC in this nation, has said those things, this nation will have broken loose. I have a blessed day. That's from Hamza in Nima. And this one, good morning, Senna. I love that presentation from Mr. Agojo, but please ask him if he's a senior police officer for quite a long time. My question is why he waited for these things to escalate before coming out. And Eric Kinsley, someone in a shaman, says, hi, Senna, every illegal act is a criminal act. And every grouping that is known to be engaging in illegal acts is a criminal group. It needs to be disbanded, simple and flat. Please tell the NSS scheme that the immediate past NSS personnel are yet to receive their statutory transportation fares. Well, that's coming from me. And this one, good morning, Senna. Please, maybe later. And Uncle, Kwesi Pratt.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised at the indications we are getting that many people in Ghana are hearing these suggestions for the first time. These suggestions have been repeated over and over and over again. I remember making these suggestions on Peace FM maybe a year ago, and I've repeated them on this very platform several times. That the time has come to give heads of our security institutions security of tenure, and to make sure that political authority is not responsible for their appointments and so on. So this is a matter which has been flogged over the years. And this police officer is merely repeating suggestions which have been made over many years and so on. Now, it seems to me that this presents a lesson in communications. How come that this has been said over and over again and it gained no traction? Why is it gaining traction today? There must be some very important lessons for us to learn in terms of communication and how issues can get traction and so on. Now, having said that, I think we are discussing a very, very important matter. And you see, anytime you begin to discuss vigilantism, people reduce it to a contest between the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party. That's sad. It is sad to the extent that vigilantism has a very long history. You understand? If you look at Hitlerite rule in Germany, you would come to appreciate the extent to which vigilantes, political vigilantes, were used in promoting fascism in Germany, leading to the death of hundreds of thousands of people. That's Hitlerite fascism. In Italy, during fascist rule in Italy, many hundreds of thousands of people were killed, eliminated, as a result of vigilantism and so on. You understand? Anywhere fascist rule has emerged, vigilantism has been a key factor. Now, if you go to Haiti, you would recall the rule of Papa Doc and Baby Doc. The Duvalier family, they used vigilantes in order to entrench themselves in power. Indeed, the vigilantes eventually came to be known as Tonton Macoutes. And the history of Haiti points to the dangers of vigilantism and so on. Now, not just that. I mean, if you look at Ghanaian history, from the 1940s onwards, up until about 1963, political vigilantism wreaked complete havoc in this country. I'm talking about the developments which led to the emergence of the action troopers as against the others who were sponsored by the United Party, which is opposed to Nkrumah. On this very platform, Alhaji and Alhaji, I recall Dr. Tony Edu telling the story of a pregnant woman who was grabbed by the vigilantes and her private part was pounded with a pistol until she bled to death and so on. You understand? In Kumasi. So we have a long history of vigilantism even in our country and so on. And it's not a new phenomenon. Indeed, I recall that sometime in 1979-80, under the rule of President Hila Liman, vigilante groups were formed in this country to enforce price control. Just to enforce price control, not to defend parties, not to defend politicians, to enforce price control. And there was a huge debate about the lawfulness of these vigilante groups which had been formed to enforce price control. There was a huge debate about it. So this is not a new thing at all. It's an old phenomenon. So, and I'm very deeply worried because I know the consequences of forming, maintaining, and operating vigilante groups. Our own history tells us that it can break down this country. It can lead to uncontrolled violence. It can lead to deaths of thousands and so on. And that's why we ought to be extremely careful about the formation of vigilante groups. I was listening to my brother this morning, and he made the point that the problem is not reforming groups and so on. But the problem has to do with whether or not what the groups do is legal or illegal. I have a serious problem with that kind of position. And my problem has its roots in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. The 1992 Constitution of Ghana is clear that you can't form some groups, no matter what the objective is and so on. And indeed, if you refer to chapter 17 of the 1992 Constitution, which talks about the armed forces of Ghana, indeed, Article 210, subsection 2, states in very clear terms that no persons shall raise an armed force except by or under the authority of an act of parliament. So you can't arm any group of persons in Ghana. You can't form a group which is armed in Ghana unless it is by an act of parliament. Now, what is passing for vigilante groups are armed groups. The Invisible Forces, the Delta Forces, Bogatanga Bulldogs, and so on, they are armed. I recall an incident which occurred around the Nima police station, Nana Akufo-Addo's residence, as opposition leader, where there was an exchange of fire with the police, and so on. So we are talking about an armed group which has been raised in clear violation of the 1992 Constitution. That's what we are talking about. You understand? And my brother, I'm getting very deeply worried about this phenomenon. Why? In this country, in our recent history, most recent history, we've had a case of a party chairman in Takoradi being set ablaze, alive, being burnt to death. You remember? In this era of multi-party democracy, a party chairman was set ablaze, he burned to death. As we speak today, the perpetrators have still not been identified. Only 2 years ago, another party chairman, some people poured acid on him, killed him. They poured acid on him. There have been several incidents of violence in our recent history, clear violence perpetrated for political reasons. Many, couple of months ago or so, the Tamale Regional Hospital was attacked, mayhem was visited upon the hospital, and so on. So there are all these cases of politically motivated violence. What are we waiting for? Are we waiting for the situation where things will get as bad as 1965, 64, 63 before we begin to act? We have a history where the sitting president, there were several assassinating attempts on him. In Nkrumah, before he became president, he was residing somewhere opposite the Malata market. Party vigilante groups bombed his house. He was then in the house with his old mother, Nyaniba. They bombed the house. We've had situations where party vigilante groups organized from La Côte d'Ivoire and Togo and exploded grenades at party rallies, leading to the maiming of innocent citizens and so on. As we speak in this studio today, one of the victims, Madam Asantua, lives in Dansuma exhibition. She has only one leg. Her life was destroyed as a result of party vigilantism and so on. This is the problem we are confronted with. Now, it is important that we examine this matter very carefully. You see, before the last elections, when the NPP announced the formation of the Invisible Forces and so on, and there was loud protest against it, they came out openly and said, we cannot trust the police service. The police service is controlled by government, and therefore we have a duty to set up a vigilante group to protect ourselves. Protect ourselves from who? I believe most people thought that we're going to protect themselves against the National Democratic Congress. Look at the practice and pitch the practice against the intention. Since these forces were formed, I have not heard a single case where they have vandalized NDC property or beating NDC people and so on. They have been used to settle internal scores in the NPP. Check the records. When they raided the NPP headquarters with cutlasses and so on, and were slashing people and so on, which NDC man was there? Was there a CPP man there? Was there a PNC man there? And so on. The taxi they bent, It wasn't burnt in the headquarters of the United Ghana movement. It was burnt in the NPP headquarters. The motorbikes they destroyed and so on. Most recently, the minister who had to jump and run, was he a CPP member? Anthony Akoto said he was an NPP member. Kwabena Ajay Japan, who smashed his car, and was Kwabena Ajay Japan a member of the Convention People's Party? Was he an NDC member? So these vigilante groups have tended to focus considerable attention on internal party matters. They have been used to entrench the power of individuals within the political parties. So it is party loyalists who have suffered as a result of the emergence of these vigilante groups and so on. Of course, after the elections, they have been used to attack state institutions for the sole purpose of capturing state resources for party use and for the benefit of loyal party members and so on. But it can escalate. That's my worry. Even at this level, we need to be exceedingly worried. But it can move to another level. And you know why I'm getting deeply worried? The National Democratic Congress has now formally announced that it also intends to establish vigilante groups at the same level. Of course, there's the argument that they've always had vigilante groups. But now it is as formal as the NPP one. Now they're also going to launch their vigilante groups. You see, I've heard party members who have said, but if the NPP can do it, why can't we do it? If the NPP is arming people who are going to play a role in the elections and so on, it is just hypocrisy and maybe extreme stupidity which will prevent the other political parties from also doing the same. If it is wrong for the NPP, it must be wrong for the NDC, it must be wrong for the CPP, and must be wrong for everybody. But if it's wrong for one, if it is right for one, it must be right for everybody. That appears to be the rationale behind this formal announcement of the NDC also preparing to launch vigilante groups and so on. Now you see, so far, we have managed to contain this because a lot of the activities have been focused inside the party and so on. What if tomorrow morning, can you imagine what will happen tomorrow morning, for example, if NDC elements in a place like Tamale are attacked and they decide to mobilize to retaliate? Can you imagine what would happen? Just imagine that these Bolgatanga bulldogs or invisible forces or whatever become crazy enough to go and attack Sofo Azoka or his business interests in Tamale, and they decide to respond. We are complaining about what happened in the KNUST. I mean, that's a Sunday school picnic. KNUST, what happened? Look at the noise we have been making for 2 weeks. You tune to radio, you can't hear anything. KNUST. Property worth 1.7 million cedis has been destroyed. 32 cars were destroyed and so on. We are worried about that. Just imagine a full-blown war between NDC vigilantes and NPP vigilantes in Tamale, or Bolgatanga, or Kumasi. Just imagine that Kumasi, NDC people have been attacked and they are responding in Kumasi. Who can live? What happened in KNUST? I say it's a Sunday school picnic. It may be a walk in a flower garden compared to what is likely to happen. Now, we should be asking ourselves very, very serious questions. And one of the most serious questions is this. Look, in opposition, the New Patriotic Party justified the emergence of the vigilante groups. In government, the leaders have taken a totally different stance. They have condemned the vigilante groups. The president has called on the police to act. Indeed, one of my friends in the NPP, what is his name? Nana Boachi has actually come public and said that no party official should even bail them. They should be jailed and so on. But you see, there's a disconnect between these declarations and action on the ground. The president says, let the law deal with them, but no law is dealing with them. When they are arrested, they are bailed by party leaders. And I even suspect that where a few of them have been fined, as an expression of tokenism and so on, I suspect very strongly that party people have raised the money to pay for the fines and so on. So there's a disconnect between these loud public declarations and the real action on the ground. Why is it so? The answer is very simple to find. I mean, I've heard politicians, leading politicians from different political parties, say that this politics is a game of numbers. I'm sure you've all heard it. There's a game of numbers. Everybody matters. Everybody has one vote. The armed robber has the same vote. The fraudster has the same vote and so on. And therefore, you should not antagonize the armed robber and so on. You hear the politicians say this all the time. Are you not frightened when you hear the politicians talk nonsensically like this? A complete, total misunderstanding of politics. Politics is not a simple game of numbers. Politics is a science of improving the living conditions of our people. Politics is a science of mobilizing people to pursue their own interests. Politics is a complete science. Politics is also about principle. You pitch principle against another. That is why you can have a party who says, as for me, I am social democratic, and a party who says that my philosophy is property owning. It's a contest of principles. It is not just a foolish game of numbers. And if politics is reduced to just a foolish game of numbers, can you imagine the kind of politics we will have? It doesn't matter. Principle doesn't matter. Nothing matters. All that matters is that get a certain number of votes. My goodness. What kind of politics is that? What kind of politics would that be? Game of numbers? So, all that matters is getting numbers. And the numbers you are getting can be racist. Okay? The numbers you are getting can be fraudsters. The numbers you are getting can be numbers of ex-convicts. The numbers you are getting can be numbers of murderers. And because you want your numbers to increase by getting votes from murderers, you won't punish murderers. How do you take action against murderers when you think that this game is a game of numbers and you need the votes of murderers? How do you then deal with murder and its social consequences and so on? So that philosophy, that politics is a game of numbers, is an extremely foolish philosophy. And it has to change. We need to have politics who sees that the object of politics is how to change the conditions in which our people live and work. The object of politics is to build a secure society in which people can go about their legitimate business without let or hindrance. The object of the kind of politics that I want to believe in, I want to participate in, and I'm sure the vast majority of Ghanaians want to participate in, is the kind of politics which aims at sending potable water, good water, to all communities. The kind of politics which is relevant in our situation and so on today must be the kind of politics which aims at educating every Ghanaian child. It is a politics which must create jobs for our people, not a stupid game of numbers. Why? If our politicians believe in this stupid game of numbers, why wouldn't we have what is happening today? We are having what is happening today because it's a stupid game of numbers. Just add on the numbers. I'm sick. You know, Assistant Commissioner of Police, what is his name?
Gojo.
Has said things which I have said already, have been said many times over. But they are things worthy of examination. Extremely worthy of examination. I mean, since 1992, every government we have had in this country has come with its own Inspector General of Police. I mean, sometimes the Inspector General who is appointed has retired, is sitting at home. And then they will jump over every other police officer and go and bring somebody who has retired already, is sitting at home looking after his grandchildren. Say, you are the only person who can lead the police, and then you bring him. You understand? What signal does this send to the hierarchy of the police institution? The signal it sends is very clear. If you are not loyal to my party, you would never rise, your security of tenure would not be guaranteed. So how can an IGP, knowing fully well that he continues to hold his position at the pleasure of the president, be against the president even when the president is wrong? This is the crux of the matter. Everybody in the police service, and I'm very sure about that. I mean, if you look at the hierarchy today, there are some who are working so hard to catch the attention of the president so that this IGP who has already retired or is about to retire, when he leaves, they can fill his place. There are some who are also sitting there and saying, the way things are going, maybe 2020, these people, they won't get it all. So they are sending signals to the opposition that, hey, I'm with you. So if you come, don't forget me. How can you build any police force on this basis? Tell me, how can you build any police force on this basis? So the whole police institution has been over-politicized. You understand? I mean, to the extent that not too long ago, we actually went through the rigor of the constitutional provisions and so on, gave the police 5-day notice and so on. The police took us to court, we went and challenged them in court, we won and so on. And then we were exercising our right to demonstrate. The police confronted us and beat the hell out of some of the leaders. I managed to, you understand, I wasn't touched. But somebody like this guy who died recently, what is his name? Oforiatta, who was the leader of the Eagle Party. He was so badly beaten. When I saw him that day, I said, this man, it would be a miracle if he lives for another 5 years. He had been beaten to pulp. You understand? Madam Amma Benuado, a woman, former minister and so on, was beaten by the police. You know, they were really beaten. Alhaji Ramadan, who is today NPP ambassador somewhere and so on, God damn it. He put foot. That's why he survived and so on. But that was not the end of the matter. The following day, I heard a police commissioner. The following day, I heard a police commissioner on radio. No, he wasn't hiding. It was not in private. Saying that, look, he was looking for 2 people. Yes, that he told his boys to be on the lookout for 2 people. Former President John Mahama and myself. And that we were lucky they didn't get us. Police commissioner! Before the demonstration, he had targeted 2 people to beat. And had given instruction that those 2 people must be beaten. Why do you think that he was doing that? What was his motivation? Was it normal police duties and so on? I mean, incredible. And this cannot continue. Now, if you look at the drafters of our constitution, they decided that for the judiciary, the Chief Justice and others should retire on their salary. Once appointed, they can only be impeached and so on. So no matter which president is sitting in the Flagstaff House, the Chief Justice will continue to enjoy her tenure of office and so on. Of course, a few things have happened recently which raises doubts about that. I mean, the removal of Charlotte Osai is one example and so on. But then the drafters of the Constitution provided security of tenure for the Chief Justice and justices of the Supreme Court. In addition to that, the National Commission on Civic Education has similar guarantees, the members, in the Constitution. The Electoral Commission, the Auditor General, and so on. What about our security services? Why can't we provide a security of tenure for people in the security services so that they can do their work according to their conscience and according to their professional ethics and so on? Why can't we do the same? Because we all want the opportunity when we get power to use these institutions in order to entrench ourselves into power and to intimidate our opponents and so on. Nothing has been done about it. We have seen the defects of this same constitution when it comes to the appointment of metropolitan and district chief executives and so on. For more than how many years, we've been insisting that that position should be elected in order to remove government from the control of that apparatus. Every government promises it. No government implements it. In opposition, it was one of the flagship promises of the New Patriotic Party. Now they are telling us that no. It will not be done before 2020. We will do it after 2020. Who told them that they will be there after 2020? They may be there, but there's no guarantee that they are going to be there after 2020. So they have to do it now. They have a 4-year mandate. They don't have an 8-year mandate. They have a 4-year mandate. Every government has a 4-year mandate. You understand? So this is the problem that this young police officer was addressing. I've been watching developments in the police service in the last 2 years, and I'm frightened. How many reshuffles have there been? I've been counting at least a minimum of 3 major reshuffles in the police hierarchy in a matter of 3 years. Why? There's one police commissioner who was in charge of Greater Accra. He was removed and posted to Winneba. Then he was removed from Winneba, given one assignment. And then he was changed again. He has been changed again. Where is the stability for him in his work? And why? Why all these changes? So every 6 months or so, you toss the policemen around and so on. Now, only recently, there was some murmuring and agitation within the police service. Why? Because the current IGP has finished his term or is about to finish his term and so on. And then somebody who is due for retirement is made the deputy IGP. Why? The signal, as far as many police officers were concerned, was that, hey, they are looking for a successor. They are preparing the grounds for a particular person to emerge as the successor, even as he's due for retirement. So there were grumblings in the police service. Is this a situation we should allow? How does this promote professionalism in the police service? People join professions, people join institutions because they hope that one day they can follow the line of progression and attain a certain level and so on. But that's not happening. It ain't happening in the Ghana Police Service because of all these manipulations and so on. Yesterday, I heard somebody doing an analysis of the police council, and my brother also did that. Even for some of the so-called, some of the things that appear to be representations, it's appointment by the president. You understand? The representation just restricts the president to who should appoint, but the president appoints. So we have a police council, which is usually presided over by the vice president of the republic, who is a serious political actor. It has the minister of interior, who is a party member and so on. Probably has the IGP, who is also appointed by the president and so on. How can this police council promote professionalism under any circumstance and so on? So this officer has said things that everybody else has been saying for a long time, things that are sensible, things that we need to implement in order to have an independent and professional police force. And I think we need to listen to him. Yesterday, I listened to another chap who was saying that, look, yeah, what the officer is saying is okay and so on. But in the meantime, since it will take a long time to do, we should think about interim measures. When they went and signed that dubious agreement, which allowed the U.S. to establish a military base in Ghana, Parliament sat in the night to approve it. Is that more important than having an independent police service? If Parliament can do overtime, sit in the night, rush bills through in order to make sure that this agreement is passed, we must begin to look at this one also as an emergency. And let all the relevant institutions work in the night so that we can have an independent and credible police force. The policeman said something which was very interesting. Says when parties are in opposition, they always claim that they don't trust the government. When they get into government, they declare full support for the police service and so on. And say, why? But when they are in government, they know that they will be appointing the IGP. They'll be appointing the deputy IGP. They'll be controlling the police council and so on. It becomes their instrument. Then when they get into opposition, because they know what they did with the police service when they are in government, they begin to cry wolf because they know what can be done with the police service. Let's stop this game and try small to build an independent and credible police force. What we have now is in shambles, and it can't take us far.
No. Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. That ends our conversation on the very first topic. Before we move on to the next one, a couple of the comments you have also been making on our very first topic. Edward Amanfo on Facebook says, Senna, this is smart. Edward Amanfo. I am listening to you all the way from Sophia University in Tokyo. Please tell my noble mentor, Kwesi Pratt, that I'm still waiting to read his book. I cannot, as a person, forgive him if he denies Ghanaians with the golden outcomes of his intellectual endowments. As a result, I am ready to share a book by Charles F. Adrin titled Political Power and Economic Inequality, a Comparative Policy Approach. If he is interested, he can reach me on, he's giving his number and his email address. Well, Citizen Zach GH.
I want to write a book, and I've been writing the book for 2 years. The problem is that there's no time.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, and look, my first attempt at a book was something which I began serializing in the Inside. It was titled Inside the BNI. After doing close to 700 pages, my computer crashed. Those days, we were using the floppy disks and so on. The computer crashed. I lost everything. Oh. You understand? And then I've started a new one. I've done 200 and something pages. And this time I decided I wasn't going to keep everything just on the computer. I was going to keep a backup and so on. So I bought a fat notebook in which I was writing. The notebook disappeared mysteriously. After I'd done 200 and something pages, the whole notebook disappeared and so on. Fortunately, I still have some of the material which has been typed. And so I'm working on it. But my brother, right now, I sleep 4 hours a day. So finding the extra time to do that book is not a joke. But I'll try.
Well, Citizen Zach G says that until the government shows serious commitment to disbanding its terrorists, the issue of vigilantism will continue as other political parties will follow suit. And Abubakar Hadi says, stop blaming the media. You had all the power and refused to develop media houses or people that will further your cause. It is very difficult to get the NDC version of events up north. The stress we go through to listen to this program is not easy. And Thomas Kweku Boatin says, please, today is my first day. Why is this old NDC man? Okay, it's not clear, but he's asking whether somebody can talk Ghanaian, but is talking NDC. That's Tommy Amsterdam. And Fuseni Dulkifi Sani Turawa, I hope I got your name right, says, good morning, Mr. Host, and your panel, especially Mr. Kwesi Pratt. These government led by President Nana Akufo-Addo have no regard for the people of this country. And as long as we Ghanaians are concerned, FIFA has banned Kwesi Nyantechi for life for corruption. And the tape FIFA bases findings on President Akufo-Addo and Vice President Baomia's names were mentioned. And if they do not clear their names, then the president and his vice president are corrupt. Habib Bantu says, Senator, good morning to you and your cherished listeners. When the MPP vigilante groups were terrorizing everybody, including the competent court of jurisdiction. We had a whole sitting president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, come to their defense. Civil society and everybody were silent. But today, because the NDC has formed the Hawks and people are talking, the hypocrisy in Ghana, and people are talking, the hypocrisy in Ghana is too much. 2020, Ghana go sweet. The Hawks will defend innocent Ghanaians while Delta Force and Invisible Force are a terrorist group like Boko Haram. Mr. President Akufo-Addo, the disco dancer, we are suffering, do something. Nuru Abdullahi says, my greetings to you and your panelists. Tell Comrade Mutala that, inshallah, he will be in parliament again. Secondly, our presidential aspirants, please, with due respect, they should stop wasting our time and their hypocrisy against ex-President Mahama and let him lead us to victory that we want. Foster Oniba Nyano says, I think he said, well, this is to you, Mr. Pratt. Says you have trust issues. Why is it he can't put his man bag down rather hanging it around his neck? That's quite personal.
Why? They're hanging a bag around my neck. Oh.
Huzai Swala
There's
Sisi.
no problem.
Senna, good morning to your panelists.
One of
Brilliant.
the people I used to admire most when I was a young person was the bus conductor. Today you don't have them.
Yeah.
And the bus conductors used to hang, these bags
around
around their
them,
neck. It's coming from my admiration of bus conductors in the 1960s. So there's nothing in the bag, oh my brother.
Huzai Swala Sise says, Senna, good morning to your panelists. Brilliant presentations by all standards. Big ups to Masa Kwesi and the Film Pass. A couple more on the radio, our WhatsApp platform says, Charles Nyamia Samanke says, I think it's a good call from ACP Agojo. And the earlier we see the need and quickly act on it, the better. But with the MPP government who are allergic to potent advice like this in place, I strongly doubt their readiness to do it. Anyway, thank God the humble John Mahama is coming back to right us systemic wrongs. And good morning, Senna, and bonjour to Honorable Alhaji Haruna. Your panelists are impressing me this morning. I totally agree with Comrade Mutala in that as the NDC, we want to please people in our political discussions. For example, the forceful removal of Madame Charlotte Osei was pushed under the carpet. We don't discuss matters to the detail. Yes, old ways of discussing matters must change. However, we should exercise decorum in our submissions. That's Ahovi Francis from Valley View branch. And BB, North Kanishi says, I am very appalled by the NDC's lamentations about the bias of the media and civil society organizations. We should establish our media houses and also support the likes of Gold to support our cause. We shouldn't expect media houses and CSOs created by MPP to be fair to the NDC. Let's get serious for once and invest in our politics. And hi, Radio Gold. Nana Akufo-Addo, the president of Ghana, must be advised by professionals to listen to advice. He is over 73 years old, and his way of thinking has gone down. What he thinks is right is always wrong. The way he removed the electoral commissioner, the way he is implementing the free senior high school against the advice of Dr. Kwame Adokufo and Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, the way he is dividing the regions, especially the Volta region, without respecting the concerns of the paramount chiefs in the Volta region. He must be advised not to bring bloodshed to Ghana. Kweku in Accra. And good morning, Senna. I want to thank all the panelists for their brilliant delivery, but I disagree partly with Mr. Mutala, because when the NDC was in power, while Mutala was part of GVT, was on GTV, could he ever disagree with the President Mahama on any issue boldly in public? Please, Mr. Mutala, if you cannot do something, don't suggest it for any other person to follow. Mr. Kwesi Pratt, my mentor, have a great day.
I spoke on the floor of Parliament against LIP. I didn't just disagree. I made a statement against it, and I still maintain that it's a very useless social intervention, considering the amount of money invested and the impact assessments that have been done to it, that the monies could have been diverted to do something meaningful than just leaving it with the Minister of Gender virtually for chop.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. Keep them coming. I'll be reading them as we move along in the program. But you can enjoy an amazing 30% on any of the following products when you buy from online, phone and accessories, tablet, flat screen TVs, and laptop, printers, among others. Simply download the Franco Trading app from your Google Play Store. Place your order and phone will be delivered right at your doorstep. For those who have challenges with the Franco app, please uninstall and download again. Visit francotrading.com/francophones.com. Branches at Adabraka, opposite Roxy Cinema bus stop, Accra, UTC roundabout behind the Despite building, La Paz near New Boy Junction opposite Prudential Bank, Circle close to Odorais, Osu opposite Echo Bank, Oxford Street, Tema, opposite Water West Community 1, Madina Old Road opposite HFC Bank, Hacho opposite Hacho Station, Koforidwa on the All Nations University College Road, Home Market Road opposite Amagashi Building, and Kaswa opposite the Kaswa Polyclinic. You can call them on 0302 225 651, 0302-225-651 or 0546-133-188. Franco Trading, phone, Pepe Fie. Let's move on to our next topic for discussion. That has to do with the latest development on the campus of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. The difficulties in constituting a council as agreed to by all parties in the impasse initially. UTAG says government is trying to dictate institutional nominees. And let's start with Alhaji Haruna again.
Yes, thank you. With this KNUST thing, I'll just, make a very short presentation on it. My thought about this is that I think the issue has been talked about over and over and over again. My take on it is that this, for me, I look at it as an assault on academic freedom. There are other issues with the student agitation and the lack of time spent to really have a conversation between the management and the students.
Okay.
And the fact that it degenerated into, vandalism where the students did what they did. The bottom line is, I think we need to be able to, the management and the students, SRC, TEU, and all these other organizations, UTAG, and all these other organizations should be able to sit down and talk about this. But when you step back and you look at what the pattern of behavior by this, government, it really begins to worry. It really begins to worry me because look at what happened with Winneba. Okay, it seems like there's a deliberate attempt, for whatever reason, for them to, again, I hate to take it that way, but it looks like that there's this agenda of politicization of of every institution, no matter how independent or semi-autonomous they're supposed to be. We have this happening at Winneba, and then thank God the Supreme Court has, made a ruling. But then again, I hear from after the ruling that the taking out of the VC avocat was wrong. Now you have people coming to say that, well, he has not been reinstated. So there are issues. And then you have KNUST. The structures, when you look at the institutional guidelines that were there, making sure that the council is put in place and the makeup of the council, all of these things were not done the way that they were supposed to be. And then you actually even have the chancellor who, for whatever reason, was not, even though he was out of the country, was not consulted. And now that he's back, and we're supposed to have a reconstituted council yesterday, and that has not been done. There's issues about the government not accepting the representatives of the other unions and the teachers and all of that. So you wonder, what is it that is going on? I just received information about 4 members having been brought forward by the government to be their council members. But I wonder, what is it that the government is trying to do? Is it simply because the current council or the vice chancellor was not nominated or appointed by them? Is that what this is about? By doing this, by interfering in the academic freedom, and it begins to degenerate into something that we really do not want. Because institutions like KNUST, University of Education, whenever, what they're supposed to do are institutions of teaching and institutions of learning. This is where, the best brains, the minds are molded and shaped so that they can deliver and be, the future leaders. And I wonder why the government is trying to do this. And I go back and I look at what is going on also at UDS. I have information that UDS, I think coming up on the 10th, either the 10th or the 19th of this month.
The renaming.
The renaming of the school, that the WAC campus shall be named University for Integrated Development and Business Studies. Now, Vorongo campus shall be named as University for Applied Sciences. Tamale campus shall be named as Rawlins University for Development Studies. Why now? Why now? Is it that, President Nana Akufo-Addo is trying to make up for the shortfall that people have been talking about, the fact that the MPP has not been able to, build or create any university. So this is his backdoor way of getting some credit for something that they've not been able to achieve. These are the things that, come to my mind, and then I'm sure a lot of other people. Is this history trying to repeat itself? Because something similar happened back in the 70s with Dr. Buzia. Okay, so one has to wonder, there seems to be some kind of systematic agenda of, weakening institutions, whether it's the Ghana Police Service, whether it's even the EC, okay, and in fact even the Bank of Ghana. And now you have these institutions, academic institutions. Why? What does this do to us, to the life of Ghanaians, when you have this systematic weakening, one by one? It seems like targeted, and each one that is targeted is headed by someone who was not appointed by the current government. It does not make sense. We are better than this. It needs to stop. We need to respect the institutions. The way that we can move forward as a country is to create, develop, and strengthen the institutions that we have, so that we don't have it, each time someone comes in, you have these kind of changes that go through. It does not help us. It does not give confidence. It does not, generate confidence in people that these institutions can do the things that they are set up to do. It does not help at all. And I will appeal not only to the powers that be, but let's look at what value systems. Let's question. Let's question. Let's not sit back and allow these things to happen without challenging them. We have the court systems. Can they do this? Is the president allowed to do this? Make changes just like that without any, solid reasons, without any grounding? And if he does, what impact does it have on people? I mean, for the past, I'll say it's almost going on 2 weeks now. KNUST has not been in school. They were supposed to start, they said it was going to be 3 months. It just did not make sense to me. And then now we hear November 8th, but November 8th was predicated on the council being reconstituted yesterday. That has not happened. So in the meantime, what happens? You have students, not only local Ghanaian students, but foreign students who have come out of country to Ghana to study. What happens to them? Again, we go back to peace and security. What happens to them? And then you look back and then you see the whole thing going on with this, our educational system, the so-called free SHS, the green track, gold track, and now they've given out some dates. And there's just a whole lot of confusion. Besides the confusion is the impunity with which government appointees make decisions. The things they do, and how they do it, and then the way they actually even boldly, openly come out to justify the things that they do. Look at this Ghana Maritime Authority. Mr. Kwame Owusu. 2-bedroom, and you spent $1 million cedis of Ghana's taxpayers to renovate. And this man is not even ashamed of saying something like that. He comes out to say that for someone of his standing, having 11 air conditioners in his house, it's not even enough. Now he was even saving the taxpayers' money, but he should have had 13. It just does not make sense. This is a pattern of behavior. And then you have, 17 people? You have 17 people going out for lunch. 10,000? First it was 8, and then they said it's 17 people. Even at 17 people, that is 588 cities. That's more than $100 for lunch for a buffet. And we're not talking about a 6-course meal. Just an ordinary buffet in a Chinese restaurant. For God's sake. Is this what we talk about when they say, is this what they mean when they talk about protecting the public purse? Or are they plundering the public purse? They do one thing and say something else. We were supposed to be moved from taxation to production, from joblessness to industrialization. We haven't seen any of that stuff. 1D, 1F, where is it? One village, one dam, where is it? So you have to step back and look at this whole thing. And then on top of them not able to deliver on the promises that they made, they go to add insult to injury by weakening the institutions that we have. The institutions that have served us so well. Winneba, the teachers, a very noble, profession. And now assault on KNUST? Regardless of where you fall, whether it's the mismanagement, whether the VC and the council did not do the right thing, or the students did not do the right thing, what matters is that what is it that this government is doing? What precipitated this issue that we have? And what are they doing about it? there are systems in place. The acts, the university acts, the constitutions does not allow them to do what they're trying to do. And I'll go back again and I say we need to take a long view. We need to depoliticize our institutions. And it goes back to having power concentrated. Even though you have the Constitution giving the president the power, I mean, there's a certain level of common sense that you would expect. This some kind of comity of the ability to have people come together and not divide them based on, which side of the political aisle that they're on. I'm taking you out, Senna, because you belong to this party or you belong to that. That is what this thing is coming down to. That is also the topic of what we talked about before. It just does not make sense. It is time that we step back and ask ourselves, as Ghanaians, as people, rational, reasonable people, is this what we want? And I submit to you that it's not, because it's not helping us. It's not going to help us on our journey to, development. It's not going to help us in showing the examples that we need to for those coming up behind us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, Senator, this issue we've discussed before, so I'm going to be very brief on it, with the hope that we'll have the opportunity to do some other issues. But before then, let me just, on the first topic, let me just go through the council of the police. And it is amazing to note that about 90% of the members that constitute the council are coming directly from the president. And for me, that's the reason why I think we need to see how we can take off this appointment powers given to the presidency, so we'll be able to strengthen state institutions like the police. Now, the vice president is one of it, and of course, he's the chairperson. Minister of Interior, appointed by the president. Inspector General of Police, appointed by the president. We have the Attorney General or his representative, also appointed by the president. We have a lawyer nominated by the Ghana Bar Association, a representative of the retired senior police officers, 2 members of the police service appointed by the president, and then finally 2 other members appointed by the president. It just doesn't make sense, it doesn't gel. So it reinforces the fact that we need to find a way of strengthening our state institutions. The other one is in line with the provision that was read from the Constitution. I hardly do this, but I am still struggling to, from the words, from the provision, I'm struggling to see how we can define vigilante groups as armed forces. Is it because they have access to guns, or, but as I
wish you had not gone there. It's very clear. The provision is very clear.
Very well, very well. Maybe I'll look at it very well again. I'll look at it again. But coming back to the issue of the schools, look, I have said that our institutions, particularly the educational institution, is supposed to be the foundation of this country. And so anytime I see or I have a feel that politicians are making our educational sector, political, it hurts me, because we are playing with the foundation of our nation and the foundation of this country. Okay. Now, as I indicated, I've had an extensive communication on this last week here on this platform, and I didn't want to repeat most of this. But key of it, last week I asked the question, and I'm still asking, where is the Minister of State in charge of tertiary education in all this? I haven't heard him I haven't seen any role he's playing in all this. If he doesn't really have a role to play, then why do we appoint and then use the taxpayers' money on such an office? If that office is irrelevant, why do we create it? Are we creating it because it is just a job for the boys? What is the rationale for that? Because what's the name, Professor Yanka? I haven't seen him in any of this impasse. I haven't seen him in it. But the other issue again that beats my imagination is the way in which the government went into the dissolvement of the council and creating a new council. Funny enough, the old council had 9 members. The new council that has been created by the government also has 9 members. And 5 out of this new council, 5 members out of this new council members belong to the old council. All right? So if we are creating a council or you are creating a committee to investigate what the old council did, and the new council has got the majority of the members in the new council belong to the old council, what work do you think they are going to do? It's going to be very difficult for anyone to say that, look, they are going to investigate a committee or a council that they belonged in to and come out and say that what we did previously wasn't the right thing. So I am scared as to whether we are really, the approach the president has taken or the government has taken will really be able to get to the bottom of it and find out exactly what is happening. But in all this, I'm also happy the chancellor has come in, and the information I got was that as of yesterday, we were supposed to have a new council. Unfortunately, it didn't take place. I don't know the reason that has been given to that, but I am hoping and believing that since the Otumfuo has stepped in as the chancellor, he will be able, and not just him, but his team will be able, his team will be able to resolve this. At the end of the day, it is the resolving of it that matters, and that is what we should be looking at. And I will encourage the president not to unnecessarily have influence in our educational system, particularly the tertiary education. Because the very moment we do that, now the posture, the president is communicating clearly to some of us is that he's bent on disappointing almost all key individuals that were appointed during the ex-government. And their posture is that they want to ensure that they have individuals appointed by them in certain institutions. Well, in as much as I have a problem with that posture, I have strongly a problem also with it when the president decides to extend it to the educational system. Because as I said, the educational system is the foundation of this country. And so I will wish that we wouldn't go, the president will not go into that, because so far the way in which administration of the institutions are going, the way in which the president has decided to step in, it is not really the best of it. Now, finally, has to do with the University of Education, Winneba. The decision that has been taken there. I'm still struggling because so far, yes, the judgment is not very out yet. But funny enough, it seems we are getting contradictory reports. The Council for comes in and give a different version of the judgment. The Council against comes in and give a different version of the judgment. And so one is a bit confused. The whole of this week I've been struggling to really appreciate the judgment that has come. Yes, as we speak, the judgment itself is not out, so we don't have access to it. But listening to commentaries from these councils, they all seem to be giving contradictory positions. I wouldn't go much into it because I am not so much full with the the judgment. And I'm hoping that in the coming days, particularly next week, which I'm sure the courts said they were going to make the judgment available, in course of the coming week, we will be able to have access to the judgment. We'll read it thoroughly, and then we'll make an informed decision out of it.
Okay. Comrade Mutala.
I hope I am not biased in my comments on this matter, and I'm saying this because as a former student leader, one and also an alumnus of the Kenya universities, particularly Katanga, I think that I need to declare my possible, bias in favor of students. But I'll try as much as I can to be as fair as possible in looking at this issue briefly. I think that it's an issue that virtually confirms the position I took earlier in the first discussions we had on the first topic, that we live under a government not of law but of will. We live under a government where the whims and caprices of the king is supremo. When people say that the law is supreme, but when it means the supremo, the law ceases to demonstrate that efficacy. The extent to which you are dealing with a president who is supposed to be an astute lawyer, a president whose legal practice perhaps is older than my entire age, yet still that president makes profound blunders when it comes to even appreciating the law. I don't want to believe it's an issue of appreciation, but a deliberate attempt to hijack the law to satisfy the greed and selfish desire of the king, in this case, President Nana Addo, His Excellency. I am raising this issue because the problems that we encountered with certainly wouldn't have been problems. When the matter first arose, I had the opportunity to have commented on it on several media platforms, and the invitation was occasioned by the fact that I have been a student leader throughout, and even the continental student leader. To that extent, I believe that the idea was to find out whether this phenomenon was new or alien to our student politics in Ghana. This is not the first time students have been engaged in such acts, demonstration, and sadly sometimes vandalism. But the reason why this is of cosmic concern to all is that we have come of age as far as student politics is concerned. What happened yesterday must not be seen happening today. When in those days the dialoguing was not something that was so encouraged, that the only language that people understood was violence and demonstration, and more so when many African countries didn't democratize, that we were still ruled with an iron fist military dictatorship. So the only procedure or avenue available for students to vent out their frustration was to engage and embark on such demonstrations. The question one asks today is that do we now have opportunities where we can express our grievances, table them for discussions with the other stakeholders, in this case, management of various universities or other tertiary institutions. Now, if we have those opportunities and if they are available, so to speak, is it a case that what we are now experiencing, people would disregard all these opportunities and embark on demonstration, is what I describe as cartoon scenario reality? Because there are instances where your viewpoint may be listened to, but it will never be factored into the final decision that is taken. If that is the case, that can occasion some of these frustrations. Be it as it may, there can still not be any justification of students engaging in such wanton destruction of properties. And that, I must say that it was unacceptable. And thank God that the student leadership themselves have issued statement, and subsequently, they have spoken to that where they condemned such act. Of course, they will try to justify, those acts. Whatever the case is, you can't justify the destruction of properties, government properties, public properties, and even private people's properties were all destroyed. And I think that is just unacceptable. So whatever the case is, there should be some consequences as a result of the actions that have been taken. But one interesting thing, Sana, I finished Legon before going to Kenya University, and I saw a sharp difference between how students were treated in University of Ghana and how students were treated in University of Science and Technology. I think that Legon, I'm told, they've also now adopted that part of KNUST's attitude. And it seems to me like a prairie fire. The universities, once you're able to, you succeed in doing this, let us also. Senior comrade, I realized in KNUST, before you contested to be a student leader, you needed to have a particular grade point. Your GPA must be at a particular level before you can contest for student leadership. In Legon, at our time, it wasn't so. And I remember when I was invited to vet the students who were contesting for student leadership of JCR of Queens. And I think a lot of the halls, anytime they had that, because when I was doing my master's in tech, I was also the Secretary General of the All Africa Student Union. So by far, I was the senior most student leader, more so because of it was a continental. So most of their vetting, either NUCs or most of the SRCs, they would invite me to come and lead the vetting. When I went there, they gave me a list and said that there was one student, when we went through the vetting, he did excellently well in the questions he answered. But immediately after the vetting, there was a petition that his GPA was about 2 point something. So the person had to be disqualified. But from my estimation as the chair of the vetting, he did excellently well. So I used to have a problem with it. I said, Legon, we don't have that. One thing I also observed in KNUST was that they were publishing students' results with their names and ID numbers. So when they publish your results, they publish your name. If my name is Ibrahim Murtala Muhammad and my ID number is 667, they will publish Ibrahim Murtala Muhammad ID number 667. So it forced students at that time, and I believe it still happens there, not to venture to read any other thing apart from their field of study. So if there was a student at the planning department reading planning, that student will not be interested in international politics, international economic issues. No, the focus is just planning, because you don't want to be embarrassed, you don't want to be disgraced, because you don't want your results to be published, your name and your ID number, and you don't perform. And once you engage in extracurricular activities, many students think that may take away the time you would have spent on your course. Clearly, this can produce a complete student. It can produce a graduate with a first class or second class upper, but such a student will be limited in terms of broadening the horizon, in terms of exposure academically. And that for me was one thing I realized was happening in tech. I also realized that in tech, the student leadership virtually didn't have any power. Their views were not taken. They complained to me incessantly at that time. Legon, it wasn't so. I'm not saying that Legon, it was so absolute that people's views were no. I was a student leader in Legon. I was engaged in student activism. I knew and I could compare and contrast the two. So when this thing happened, I was not surprised. I wasn't surprised because for me, it was a long-term frustration that the student had. And the only way they felt they could vent out that frustration was to engage in this unacceptable conduct. But that is not to say that the students, and the university authorities who didn't conduct themselves well. Immediately this thing came out, there was a trend. Almost every single appointee of this government started calling for the dismissal of the vice chancellor. I remember I made comments on this, and some people felt that no, there is an agenda on a particular platform. There is an agenda. I said no. I was not looking at it as political clientelism. I was looking at it as a student leader. Of course, I admitted that I could be biased, but I had nothing done to defend the students, but then also point out the vandalism and that misconduct. But if you observed, the National Youth Authority leader, he called for the removal of the Vice Chancellor. Sami Aoku, the national organizer, called for the removal of the Vice Chancellor. Almost every single MPP appointee and party leadership started calling for the removal of the Vice Chancellor long before any investigation had commenced into the matter. So clearly, it was the agenda of government to get the Vice Chancellor out. And it's still the agenda of government to get the Vice Chancellor out. Where I would blame the Vice Chancellor as the head of the university administration. There were instances students reported that they were being beaten by security. There was a cell, on campus. And I thought that if these things were actually brought to the attention of the Vice Chancellor, he ought to have acted. But it wasn't only the Vice Chancellor, the Dean of Students. Because there are some cases that can be reported to the Dean of Students that the Vice Chancellor you may not even hear. Because if the Vice Chancellor, the Dean of Students can handle it, He may not even refer it to the Vice Chancellor. He may not even bring it to Council. He may feel that, look, I can handle this at this level. So if indeed those reports were made to the Dean of Students, because if you read the statement that was issued by the SRC, all this abuse by students, beaten by securities, they haven't indicated that they reported to the Vice Chancellor, but they reported to the Dean of Students. Is it deliberate that the Dean of Students had that and never informed the Vice Chancellor, or he felt that he could what? He could handle it? So that is where I have a problem with the Vice Chancellor. I thought that if the reports were made to him, if they were actually brought to his attention, I can't imagine how those, internal security men will be allowed to go, and I can't imagine why students will be dealt in a manner that they were dealt with. There's another issue. There was also a violation of the rights of students as permitted by the law statutes establishing the universities. As part of this, the university students have the right to elect their leaders. Now, 2 halls elected their leaders. And because those leaders took the university to court for conversion of those halls into mixed halls, the university decided to more or less sack them. We are no longer going to deal with you. You are no longer recognized as students' representatives, and had their own leaders from first year. That for me is unacceptable. It was wrong. There's another thing that happened that I feel that the conduct was also very bad. Every single thing that happened at that time, the conversion and the reasons given for the conversion, for me, is even the most laughable. Now, if you listen to the current Minister for Education, sometime in March, when they had their matriculation, he announced that it was government policy to convert Katanga Hall to a mixed hall. Now, it was a policy of government. The Minister for States, Professor Yanka, also when he also made same statement that it was a policy of government. So the conversion of those halls into mixed halls was just a policy of government. So what will be the crime of the University Council and the Vice Chancellor in the implementation of a policy directed by government? Now, let's look at the justifications given. In order to appeal to the emotions of the Ghanaian people, and to be sexist, because they knew that once they used that sexism as an appeal to the emotions of Ghanaians, everybody will agree with them that yes, they should have allowed them to convert those halls. That yes, we are converting the hall so that we can create more spaces for ladies. Now listen to the illogical, action and even statement. Katanga is a male-dominated hall. Ponty is a female-dominated hall, isn't it? You make Katanga a mixed hall, and then you make the other hall to a mixed hall, and you tell me you are creating spaces for women? If you had made Katanga a mixed hall, and then left the other female hall a female hall, then I would have agreed with you that yes, you are making Katanga a mixed hall so that more spaces will be created for female students. That is not the case. So that for me is bonkers. The argument that it was meant to create space is bonkers. Now, if you look at the reasons why the new board, which was supposed to be constituted and sworn in, has not been done, because government is not pleased with the position taken by the other members, because you have 15. Government appoints 4 of the members. You have institutional heads. Of course, it's just only in KNUSA that Asante is the life chancellor of the university. So you can't have anybody as the chancellor of the university apart from the Santini. Now, government is not pleased with the fact that the institutional representatives, they said we are not changing them. And the reasons Teo have actually given is that some of them are elected. So if you have a Teo president or one of their executive who is elected, and he represents them on the board by virtue of the fact that he's an elected officer. So you can't tell us that take him out because we don't like him. Now, if you are telling them that, you are indirectly telling those institutions that the people you have elected, I don't like them. So you are determining to them who leads them. And that for me is an affront to democratic process. So that is the reason. Now, government has changed. I'm told just this morning they have now named or changed their 4 representatives. That is your business. You can't determine to us who represents us. You don't have the power to determine to us who represents us on the what? On the University Governing Council. But you can change the people you want to change. So you don't need anybody to tell you that this whole idea of changing was nothing but to get out the Vice Chancellor for reasons best known to them. And let me commend TEU and UTAG for their position, that it doesn't matter who is involved. What matters is that the sanctity of our representation and institutions at any point in time ought to be protected. Now, if the president doesn't like the Vice Chancellor, and they have indicated that clearly, must we change the Vice Chancellor? And I believe there could be other leading members of NPP who are members of UTAG and TEU and others. But they look beyond just the political interest and look at the need to safeguard and protect the integrity of the institution. And I condemn and I commend them for that. If I had a white collar, I would have given to the leadership. These are the kinds of things we expect institutions, independent institutions, to be engaged in. And perhaps the admonishment of the police officer of the need for state institutions to be independent, regardless the influence that politicians may have on them, is that they should be learning from the position taken by both UTAG and TEU and other institutions, and with their representatives on the University Council, because this is just unacceptable. I think whatever the case is, there will be consequences. The SRC themselves have said they are not changing their leadership, and in fact issued a statement and said that they are not in support of any attempt to remove the Vice Chancellor. Interestingly, my last comment, you have the NUCs, whether local NUCs or national NUCs, coming out to disagree with the SRC. That is absolute nonsense. Local NUCs doesn't determine to student representatives in the various campuses what they do, as long as what they do has got nothing to do with the rules and regulations governing the conduct of NUCs. So if the SRC decides that we don't think that the Vice Chancellor should be removed, who are you, NUCs, to say that you disagree with the SRC? The only motivation which can lead any NUCs member to condemn the position taken by the SRC that they are against the removal of the Vice Chancellor may be something beyond just sincerity. It may have to do with some political affiliation. And that, for me, is another danger in the politicization of positions taken by student leadership. That is not to say that even our time, we didn't have student leaders who were known and identified to be affiliated to one political party or the other. We all had political parties. When we were in student activism, everybody knew this person belongs to this person. But when it comes to issues confronting us, we put aside. So my simple advice to the student leadership, the SRC and the NUCs, is that if TEU and UTAG and Co., regardless their political affiliations, they can take a principled position to defend the interests of their organizations, then the student leadership should have been people who should take that lead. And I think that this government should spare the Vice Chancellor. If the Vice Chancellor engaged in something that was wrong, they can deal with it. And I said, there should be some consequences. But government has indicated clearly that they don't want the man, they want the man out. Take the University for Education, Winneba. I believe my friend Afenyo Markins should even be quiet. He's not even quiet. He's saying that it wasn't the courts. And I was shocked to hear him say that it wasn't the courts that sacked the man, it was the University, what's the name? Council, right? Council, yeah. That it wasn't the court. Interestingly, there is nothing, no council, no organization is above the laws of Ghana. That's right. So if anybody thinks that his rights have been trampled upon, he's been denied his rights, the person would have to go to court. And the decision and instruction of the court supersede any decision that is taken by the council. Now, because you went to court and then the person has won, that what you engaged in was illegal, it has ethnic undertones in them. When Professor Atuguba made that statement, knowing him very well, there was no way he could make that statement publicly if he didn't know what was going on. That if the blind man says he's going to throw you stones, perhaps he's either holding the stone or he's stepping on one. When he made that statement, there were people who condemned him and said he was making, it's very clear to everybody. If you look at the genesis of the case, you don't need anybody to tell you that certain people they wanted to get certain people out for nothing but except that their names rhymed in a way. Or perhaps if you draw the names or write the names, the shape will look a different way. And I don't think that it argues well for our democracy.
Thank you, Comrade Mutala. Mr. Pratt.
Well, I'm just going to make some very, very quick remarks. We've discussed this matter over and over again, and there's no point just repeating ourselves. Yesterday, I read a story which was carried on the front page of the Daily Graphic. It was a story about the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana. He was actually addressing some forum in the university, Legon, and was saying that he did not want what happened in Kumasi to be repeated on his campus. And he advised the lecturers of the University of Ghana to treat students as mature people and to treat them with utmost respect. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana said that if his lecturers treated students with utmost respect and involved them in the running of the university, what happened in KNUST would not happen there. And this was remarkable. This is at the bottom of the matter. What happened in KNUST could have been averted if university administrators were minded to see students as partners in their work, to see students as mature people who could contribute meaningfully, to development on the campus and so on. I mean, this whole business of introducing female students into Katanga, it simply doesn't make sense, especially when we are told that the rationale is to increase the female population on the campus. When at the same time, female halls or exclusive female halls of residence were being also, they were sending males there and so on. It didn't make sense at all, you understand? But because of the resistance, the university authorities then decided to take measures to curtail the rights and freedoms of students. So students were not allowed to drum and dance, they were not allowed to engage in things about morale and so on. Not just that, they actually built cells on campus into which students were detained and all. My brother, I had the shock of my life when I saw a video in which students had been lined up, university students had been lined up, and they were being caned on the buttocks under the supervision of a lecturer. And I said, my goodness, even a kindergarten is better. You don't treat students like that because you want to implement some crazy policy which had not been thought through properly and so on. Cause students caning them on the buttocks and so on. And then you had a situation where university guards actually had been empowered to beat up students. And I was shocked when I got to know that students had been told that they could not go out of the halls after 10. So at 10 o'clock, the halls would be locked. I mean, students of a university, when do they study? I mean, incredible. Even in the secondary school, we used to study beyond lights out up to 11 and so on. And students of the university cannot study and so on. And students doing architecture, you can't study in your hall. The tools are not there, so I do hope that what happened there is not repeated anywhere, and the university administrations around the country will learn their lessons. My brother Mutala, as for this thing about the violence, I mean, I'm not taking in. There's too much hypocrisy. Too much hypocrisy by the political leadership in this country. In your own parties, when it comes to the contest for leadership and so on, you pour acids on people. You beat up people. You burn things and so on. And you have the effrontery to be complaining about student violence. Let the leaders show by example, and we'll follow them. You understand? Let our leaders show us the example. They are not showing us the example. Yes, 32 vehicles or so have been destroyed. Property worth 1.7 million Ghana cedis have been, it's a dent in public coffers and so on. I agree. But why are we learning this from? If you go and form Bogatanga Bulldogs and Invisible Forces and turn around to tell students not to destroy things, are you not being hypocritical? Let's stop this hypocrisy.
So I think that leaves us time for some quick optional comment. Mr. Pratt?
I have no optional comment.
Comment, Mutala.
I would just say has to do with the problem that we are confronted with. And I think that clearly I have listened to a lot of narratives. Some have said that the university students we have today are young men. I remember someone said that they are 16, 17 years. Senna, I did my first degree in psychology, and I was taught that we have different types of ages. We have chronological age, we have biological age, we have social age, we have educational age. Someone can be chronologically younger, but educational older. Yeah. Someone can be, educational older, but biologically younger. Yeah. The number of years one lives in the world is what they call chronological age. So if you are 20 years and I'm 15 years, you are older than me. But you can't tell me that someone who is 15 years and he's in the university, then you still want to treat such a person like a kid. Now, in doing that, then we are conflicting chronological age with educational age. Yeah. Now, those 15-year-old boys, 16-year-old boys they are talking about, you go to one class, they may be there with people whose ages are virtually half of their father's parents' ages. You can be in the class 15 years. Someone can also be in the class 30 years. It does happen. It depends on at what age. Let's get something very clear. At those ages, those people are university students, for God's sake, and they ought to be treated with some respect. Okay. My experience in KUST, as I said earlier, has to do with that fact that this thing has been happening not today. It is not for nothing that some halls are sex-segregated halls. That you can have Legon, you have Volta Hall, which is purely female hall. Then you have Comalt Hall, which is purely male hall. And the reason is simple. There are some students who will not feel comfortable in a mixed hall. I was in Legon Hall. I was in a mixed hall. There were certain things that I could not do. And many of us who were in Legon Hall, Ikwafu or Saba, then who were mixed hall, there were certain things we could not do because, look, you can't just go and remove your shirt. This is your floor. You are opposite, females. You could not do that. But you go to Comalt Hall, they are at liberty. They can go bare-chested. And you go to Volta Hall, they also be at liberty. They can wear their panties and do anything. There are some students who will not feel comfortable. So when you are setting up a university, particularly a public university, you should be mindful of individual needs. But let me ask this question. All the universities are on a race of admitting foreign students. The hypocritical position they have taken and the reasons for the justification of the needless conversion of those halls where they use sex. When they are admitting foreign students, do they take into consideration the sex difference? No. What determines the admission is money. Now, if you have about 1,000 spaces for foreign students, if you have 999 of them being males, they would admit. They won't say that we want to admit more females than males. They won't do that. So I think that we need to avoid that. Legon, they should. Casford is also University of Cape Coast. Yeah. I think that they need to respect some of this. But the student leadership too must begin to assert themselves. To be very honest. Now you go to various campuses, you have two groups of student leaders. SRC, they've elected, some have disputed, they also have their own SRC. The moment you allow political parties, and this one, let me admit that both the NDC and the MPP are the biggest culprit, that we influence some of these things using our various, either TAIN or TESCON in our various campuses. It is weakening the student front. I have seen this in many African countries as a student leader of the All Africa Students Union. And this is just a tip of an iceberg. But we need to prevent that because it whittles down our democratic gains. It makes us appear in a way, because the moment things like that happen, it is global, it's everywhere. But I really have a challenge with regards to the destruction of property, particularly private individuals' properties were also destroyed. And the SRC have issued statement to that effect. I think that the NUX leadership and the SRC must reconcile their position. Let them understand that NUX is the mother student unions of all student unions in Ghana, but NUX cannot be interfering in internal activities of students in KNUST, particularly when the highest decision-making body of the SRC have taken a decision, and their decision is that we are against the removal of the Vice Chancellor. The NUCs should not be interfering in that, except that there is a different motive rather than just looking for the concerns and interests of students.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mutala. And finally, Mr. Wozo.
Sana, just like Kwesi said, I also have no optional comments to make, but just to ask of my uncle Sam Piali, where is he?
He said you are a bad boy.
Uncle Sam, I've missed you, so let us see you wherever you are. That is all.
Thank you very much. So you had Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jr., who is managing editor of the Inside newspaper. You also had Comrade Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed, who is a former Deputy Minister of Trade.